I'd like to call upon these two fine individuals. EV charging, another reason to stay and play. Let's give a warm round of applause as they come up here. We got Valentino Ramos Huggins, Seminole Tribe of Florida, manager partner of Huggins Group, Florida LLC, Huggins and Amerstar, a joint venture. And also we got the one and only Oscar Rodriguez. He's the guy gave that power charger away yesterday, CEO of Nova Charge. Let's give them a round of applause. Let them hear you, let them hear you. Everybody together say double trouble. That's what you're getting right now. Let's go.
Thank you, Chance. Appreciate the introduction. I do have to say something. So unfortunately, Valentino could not make it. He's ill. Yeah, he's stuck in Tampa, I think it is.
He's in BC with the flu. You guys don't want to see him, I promise you. Yep. So we told Tino to stay home. We are a Seminole tribal vendor company. Tino Huggins is our partner, our Seminole partner. We're here today promoting our EV program for the tribe and other parts of Indian country. And we'd love to talk to you, stop by and see us. Actually, right now, during the speech, they're still doing the raffle if anybody wants to go out and sign up. This is like a $3,000 EV charger we're getting ready to give away. So anyway, welcome everybody. We appreciate you being here. Thanks to Georgette and her crew. What a kick-ass job they do, huh? Anyway, thank you so much. Oscar's going to give you a good background on the industry and where we're at, and hopefully you guys will stop and see us.
Okay, thank you very much. So first of all, let me also clarify a couple things. So I'm the chairman and CEO of Nova Charge, and Nova Charge is an EV charging. I think I can say this now. After 18 years, we're experts in EV charging. We started from the very beginning. We have deployed many EV chargers throughout the United States. That's our main focus, is the United States. All the way from Florida to Hawaii, and from Miami to Seattle, right, and Boston to Southern California. So we've done this for a long time. We've seen the industry change a lot, lots of new technologies, et cetera. And when I first met James and his team, they were looking for someone who could bring the expertise to native tribes, right? And so we formed a JV, which, traditionally I think the JVs have these long hyphenated names that everybody wonders what they are. So given the fact that we're a commercial company, I like catchy names, and we did a little bit of research, and so I wanted to honor the Seminole Tribe as a thank you for giving us the opportunity to serve you. And so we named the company Grass River, right? So, and that's because the Everglades are known as the river of grass, right? So that's the reason why we chose that. So if you see Grass River and next to the Nova Charge table, we are the supplier, Nova Charge, to Grass River. Grass River will be the vehicle by which we engage with the tribes, but also where the training will go. And I was really inspired by John Redcloud up here talking about training, because I think part of renewable training should also be EV charging, installation and site surveys and things of that nature. I think it's a natural sort of complement to everything you guys are doing in solar, right? And so, so we look forward to being a part of that. So first of all, I've been warned that this is not a sales conference, right? And I do a lot of training, by the way. I actually am, believe it or not, it's hard to see it from looking at me, but I actually am a professor at the University of Central Florida in the College of Engineering. So I do teach classes there. I do know how to do it, make it not be a sales job, so I'm going to do my very best here. I do need some help here. Is there a clicker or something that I'm missing for me to move forward the slides, or should I ask for the slide to go forward? How does this work? Somebody, anybody? Oh, there you are. Okay, thank you, sir. All right, thank you. All right. Okay, so what I want to talk to you about is EV charging, but I want to get a little bit of education in terms of where we are today, because in the last 12 months, there have been a lot of changes to the industry, right? It used to be lots of federal money available. Some of that federal money was held up. It caused many people that had big plans to kind of hold off and pull the reins back. And so, after 18 years, we've kind of seen this up and down, so we kind of know how to surf over those waves. But I want to tell you kind of where we are today. And by the way, everything that I tell you could change next week, because there could be another executive order, I don't know. But the truth of the matter is that there are a lot of things that are trends that are, in my opinion, a little bit unstoppable at this point, and I think we should kind of embrace that. So the first thing I want to say is, let's talk about the current US market. I believe EVs are here to stay, and it's the reason for EVs being here to stay is what's really held EVs back in the last 18 years, right? I mean, this is still a nascent market, even though we've been in it 18 years, is the numbers of models of automobiles, and I would say numbers of models of well-performing automobiles still haven't been filled out. And that's okay, by the way. That's not a ding on our automobile industry, right? Because if you look at back in the late 1800s, right, when we were trying to make the transition from carriages to automobiles, it took a long time to do that, right? So whenever there's a technology change and whenever there's an existing market, and by the way, the market of carriages was very big, right? So I got this figure, in 1890, there were over 6,000 carriage makers in the United States, right? That were factory carriage makers, meaning they had a formal factory and they made carriages, you know, pumped them out just like we pump out cars today, 6,000 of them, right? But there were other cottage industry, you know, in other words, very customized carriages, and so a total of 13,000, over 13,000 companies made carriages. Does anybody want to guess? I'll let you guys, somebody stick your hand up if you think you know it. How many of those carriage companies actually turned the corner to become automobile manufacturers? One. Okay, and you guys, some of you may know it, some of you may be too young to know it, but the company is called Studebaker, okay? Studebaker, it was formed in 1852, a long time ago, right? And before the Civil War, imagine that, right? Studebaker started creating and manufacturing carriages. And in 1902, they made their first automobile, and they made their last carriage in 1920. Okay, 18 years before they obsoleted the carriage, right, out of Studebaker. And then eventually they went off to merge with Packard and so on. And so the only one made the transition. One of them, by the way, some of you guys may also know, realized that they did not have any expertise in engines, so instead what they did was they said, hey, we know how to make carriages, so we can do the body of the car. Anybody want to guess what that is? Okay, those of you that have had GM cars over the years, Chevy, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, inside the door you always saw Body by Fisher, right? Okay, so Fisher Body was created out of Fisher carriages, and those are the guys that survived. So imagine, right, we've got a lot of automobile manufacturers here. How many do you think should survive? Well, if the statistics are statistics on carriage evolution is any different, maybe not a whole lot. So we shouldn't be surprised that some come out of the chute with a lot of roar, and then they run up against a few difficulties, right? Technologically, we're all learning. What do the batteries do? How do they behave? How do the motors behave? What do customers really want? Can you charge it fast enough? Are they too used to gassing up in 3 minutes and going, and therefore the paradigm changed to having to stay and linger while your vehicle refuels may be too big of a street to cross, right? So all that stuff has to come to bear, and so you can see, look, the ones at the bottom, I mean, I hate it, I love those cars, right? But Mercedes-Benz is at the bottom, negative growth. Why? They had a little bit of an initial introduction problem, right? Do I believe that they're going to change it? Absolutely, right? So next year, we'll see another, growth pattern here again. But you can see Volvo at the top, right? Volvo took a while to get here. Now they were at the top in terms of growth. All of these are U.S. figures, by the way, only the U.S. market. So when we look at that, we know that there's a lot of models coming on, and more importantly, models that are usable also in the industrial space are coming on. So those of you that know trucks, right, especially fleet trucks, you know that if you're at any red light in Florida, by the way, we're based in Orlando, Florida, so any red light in Florida, there's all kinds of pickup trucks in front of you. That's really what they are. The platform is a pickup truck, but it might be a plumber's truck, or it might be an air conditioning truck, or it might be a carpenter's truck, and they all have different configurations in the back, which means they really started with a platform that was readily usable and convertible by a third-party company. That's usually the way it works. Those things have not really been available yet, and so there's a lot more to be done there on the fleet side by enabling those platforms that then enable the configurations that you need. So you can see here, right, even though we've been at this 18 years, I still don't have a plumber's truck that's specific to how do I put the piping that I need and all the parts that I need to go in and be able to fix people's plumbing, right? So it takes a while for industries to make a change, right? And a lot of it is driven by the availability of vehicles. So it's not so much do people want it, but there's all these little technical things we got to work out, and also the configurations have to be there. All right. Okay, I'm going to speed up because I'm taking up too much time. Okay, so what happened this last year? Well, in 2025, we actually had good growth. Tesla is still the dominant player. And it reasserts something that's known in technology, which is first to market, unless they stumble, always seems to win. Okay, that's a recurring pattern over and over and over again. So if you're the first to market in a category, you always win unless you stumble. If you stumble, the number 2 player might overtake you. So there is a number 2 player that has emerged. That's General Motors. General Motors, you'll see here, if I can't back it up and I won't even try, but in the prior slide, you'll see that there were 3 General Motors cars in the high growth, right? There was General Motors, right, with cars and trucks, right? The Blazer, the Equinox, the Silverado, all of those. And then you had General Motors, right? The GM label. And then you also had Cadillac. All of those are using the same basic platform. So General Motors has done a very smart thing, which is kind of mimic what Tesla's done. If you sit in one Tesla or sit in another Tesla, I own a Tesla, I've owned a few, right? And you'll see that it all behaves the same. Why? Because it's all the same software and hardware platform, right? The battery may be a different size, maybe there's fewer motors in one versus the other, but it all behaves the same. And if you get into a Tesla, you can even set it up so that when you log in, because it's connected to your phone, if I rent a car, it knows who I am, and I can set up all of even my seat preferences go with me, right? So all the same platform. Okay. So what does this all mean? So as we're looking at this is there are players that are coming on, there are players that are at the top, but if you look at what's happening, one of the things that we haven't turned, and we talked about technology and the need to get a lot of things fixed, economics still needs to get fixed. And so here's an example of BYD in China, right? And China has an interesting advantage here, and that's that it's so big, and they have such a big need and a big push from the government because they have a need to get off of petroleum for light trucks and cars, right? Because they don't have their own petroleum, they have to buy it. That's been in the news, right? So China buys a lot of petroleum. That's not good use of their currency, so therefore they'd like to wean themselves off of that. They have had a government push, right? It's a little less chaotic, right? We have, capitalism always has some chaos, right? So ours is a little more chaotic, theirs is less chaotic, and so they have mandates that go out, and you actually put chargers in place, and they have over 100 different brands in China delivering different models, so you can see that all the different model configurations are there. But more importantly, 20% of the Chinese market is much bigger than 20% in volume than the 20% of the US market. So they got to volume quickly, and volume is what enables cost reduction in any manufacturing environment. And from that, you can see that they've dropped, and now the electric vehicle version of the same type of automobile in China is cheaper than the gas petroleum version. Why? Because, and I'll show you in a couple of slides here, that eventually EV technology and components are cheaper over time at the same volume than internal combustion parts, right? Because of the complexity of internal combustion. So you can see that Europe and the United States are still not there with enough volume, yet China's there, and the danger for US automobile manufacturers is that China now can export around the world at a very cost-effective, using a very cost-effective method, right? Okay, so what will drive volume? What does that volume do for automobiles that will make it cheaper to bring it down so we can all sort of aspire to everyone have an EV? Well, the biggest component, and this is, I know it's hard to see, and all these slides will be shared so you guys can all see it. And I understand I'm being memorialized on YouTube, right? So I guess I better watch my P's and Q's here. I don't want to step on myself. But by 2030, EVs will be cheaper in cost because the expectation is that battery technology changes, plus the volume of those battery technology changes, right, out in the open market will give us a situation where you can see by 2030, the EV is cheaper than the gas vehicle by 2030. Why? Because transmissions and internal combustion engines, God love them as much as we love the roar, the reality is that they're more expensive to build and the materials are still expensive relative to the materials that you put into EVs. And all this stuff that you hear about rare earths is just a temporary problem until we develop the volume of rare earths. Then they'll come down in price as well. Okay? Those are all predictions. And so you can see here that and even with relaxed CAFE standards, by the way, there's been a lot in the news about the administration reducing the CAFE standards. CAFE standards, just for everyone to, so we're all level set, it's a standard that was put in place by several administrations, by the way. It's not just one or the other. Several administrations over time that said automobiles need to have increasingly better miles per gallon capability. And there was even for EVs an EMPG that was designed to equate for the efficiency of a gas car. And so the standard was supposed to go over 50 miles per gallon starting this year. We were at mid-40s as of last year, and so now by resetting the standard down to 35 miles per gallon, the expectation is that there will be a way for the automobile manufacturers that are the internal combustion manufacturers to use less components or better, easier designs to lower the cost of manufacture. When everything is said and done, right now the estimates are it's only worth about $1,000 of difference in price to the consumer. Okay? So if that's worth, so your internal combustion engine vehicle will come down by $1,000, but based on this, it looks like we're better off buying more EVs to get to volume so we can drop the whole thing, because in the end, that $1,000 will not come down next year by another $1,000. Maybe they'll get a little bit extra volume out of it and maybe get another $600, but it's because it's asymptotic how low you can bring internal combustion engine components, and that's the bulk of the drivetrain. You can see the pink, just to help everybody out, the pink is the drivetrain. The drivetrain on internal combustion engines can't go back down far enough at this point unless you radically reinvent something, right? And no one seems to know what that might be. Not even a rotary engine, right, will bring the cost down. And so therefore, internal combustion engines are reaching the point of diminishing returns when it comes to cost, okay? All right, so when the volume catches up, and again, if you look at the prior, it's on the prior chart, China's there because they sold 1.8 million units of EVs, right, 18 million units of EVs versus 12 million units of internal combustion, so the EVs have overtaken internal combustion, right? Okay. All right, so what this means is volume. The quicker we get to volume, better off we are. But let's talk about this. Okay, so what's the difference here, and what does this mean to charging? Because eventually I'm coming to charging. So this is a hybrid. So some of the automobile manufacturers that have had a couple of stutter steps on getting to their EVs correct, they've taken on a new design cycle, but that new design cycle could take 3 or 4 years. Okay? And so because of that, what are they going to produce and sell today? Because they have to stay in business. And they're going to produce and sell something they know how to do already, which is hybrid electric cars, right? So hybrid meaning internal combustion engine coupled with an electric motor and a battery. And so a normal hybrid that you do not plug in, right? That's what's being depicted right here. Effectively, the engine acts as a part of a generator, so your normal alternator has a little better capacity to recharge the battery. That's what it does, right? And then when it can, if it has enough juice in the battery, it will use the electric motor to move around, and maybe a combination of the electric motor and the normal drivetrain in order to give you a better efficiency. And it does work, right? So those of you that have had hybrids, how many people have driven hybrids here? Okay, all right, it's about 20% of you, right? And so you probably noticed that your miles per gallon probably went up by about 10 points, right? And that's because it's trying to be efficient, trying to use the electric motor, and especially in some cases, the hardest thing to do to move a car and be efficient is the first 10 to 15 to 20 miles per hour, right? So if you can break the static friction, I know I'm being a little too professorish there, right? If you can break the static friction of the wheels, right, and you get to 20 miles an hour on electric only, then the gas engine has less of a hard time pushing it the rest of the way, right? And so a lot of times there are some of these tricks that are used here. Okay, over here you have a battery vehicle. The battery vehicle is just electric motors with a battery. Here we've only shown one electric motors, but most of them have multiple electric motors. Then those things have to be charged, however. That's how they get their fuel. It's not a gas tank. The battery gets charged by connecting it into a charging station. And if you want to do this in a reasonable amount of time so that you're not hanging around all afternoon, then you really want to do it on a DC fast charger, also known as a level 3, right? But it's a DC fast charger, and this is an electron pump, consider it that way, right? And it's just filling up your battery with electrons as quickly as possible. And so you can add a lot of miles in a short amount of time, so long as you've got a fast DC fast charger, and so long as your car is designed to be able to swallow the energy fast. Because that's the other catch, right? That's sometimes not clear. You can go to a big DC fast charger, but if your car can only take it at a certain rate, consider it's almost like the filler neck is not big enough, right? If it can't take it at the right rate, then you're still going to be there a while anyway. So all of these things can confuse people, but it's an important consideration. But it can also charge on a level 2, meaning if you have time, like at your house overnight, or at work for 8 hours, or maybe you go to the movies and retail has it and you plug in, or hey, you could come to a casino and maybe outside, you plug in. If you have time, then you can get lots of energy slower, but the energy adds up because your battery is charging over time, just like your phone, okay? So the problem with DC fast chargers is they're really expensive to buy and install. Okay, because DC fast chargers need a lot of power. And if you have a lot of power but you don't have the infrastructure, like say for example, you built a building, and at the time that the building was built, that's when the power company sized the transformer outside of your building that they feed your building. And if suddenly you come and you say, hey, I want to convert my entire fleet that includes 30 cars that used to be only gas, right? Now they're on electric, and I want to charge them overnight in my depot, and now I want 15 dual port DC fast chargers, each one of them at 100 kilowatt. The power company will say, okay, it'll take 6 months, and that will be, $75,000 for that. And you're going to say, ooh, wait a minute. Okay, that's a little more than I expected. So now you're going to look for alternatives, right, to do that. So DC fast chargers, depending on what you have available in your property, depending on where you want to do it and how many ports you want to connect, all simultaneously, that's where the big money can come in. And we're talking anywhere from, let's say, just to give you some numbers, assuming there's no utility upgrade, anywhere from, say, about $60,000 for the unit, a reasonable unit, 180 kilowatt, which is what the government was demanding for NEVI, about $60,000 to $65,000 for the unit, and maybe 1.5 times that for the installation, because you got to have power, you got to have disconnects, you got to have lots of big heavy-duty things, and it's a lot of labor in this. And if you have to go under a beautiful parking lot with directional boring because you've just paved it, you don't want to tear it up, so that all costs extra money to get it right. So in the end, you have to stripe it, and you have to put up signs, and you want to put up bollards so somebody doesn't run a truck through it. All that great stuff has to be done, so that makes it expensive. Consequently, the level 2 is more like an appliance, right? It's slower, but it can go off of a typical AC 110 panel. Doesn't require its own panels unless you need extra space, right? So it could go anywhere from single dollar sign to double dollar sign, but it certainly doesn't start at $3 signs, going on up to, you know, how much? I got 5 there. I probably undershot it by having only $5 signs, right? So, and I can tell you that one of the things that we've done is, for example, some of the turnpike deployments, and they were over $1 million, right, for these turnpike deployments, right? Okay, so give you a sense of that, right? Okay, so let's look at something else that I think is really important, is the combination of both the hybrid capability and the plug-in capability, because this actually is the most efficient for you in getting you the best gas mileage, right? Why? Because the battery is not a giant battery, so it doesn't have to sit around connected to a charger for a very long time. But it can give you about, depending on the size of the battery, depends on how heavy the car is, right? But they're all trying to shoot to give you about 50 miles on pure electric. Now, because the average commute in the United States typically is about 40 to 45 miles, okay? If you have 50 miles, that means you could go to work, you could then come home, pick up the kids, go to the grocery store, and come on home, right? All within your 50 miles. Guess what? You're on pure electric the whole way, which means you haven't touched one drop of gasoline, right? And as a result of that, your gas mileage goes way up, right? Because you're not really turning it on unless you decide to go to the beach for the weekend, right? Or you're gonna go to the mountains, whatever, and then it'll turn on, obviously. Any kind of distance will make it turn on. But the beauty of this is, because the battery is small, it doesn't take much time to fill it up, so you don't need a big DC fast charger. The level 2 product is sufficient, right? And because all these products are standard, right, they can all be connected to software that will give you a vending machine capability. You can differentiate between a resident and a guest at an apartment complex. You can differentiate between the people who are part of the players club over here, as opposed to, you know, just regular me who walked in the door. I have to pay. Everybody else, you know, everybody who's a players club may get free charging because the system can recognize who they are, right? Okay, so if you look at now, let's talk about requirements for EV charging. And again, not a sales job, right? This is me telling you what I would look for if I were you guys looking for EV charging. Number one is, I would look for products that have a lot of variety, and that they're all open standard. And you got to be careful with this, because there is a standard been developed, but not everybody adheres to the standard. And it's kind of like the old days when you used to buy a printer, and hey, that printer was a PostScript printer, and no, this printer is an HP printer, so it uses this HP thing. And it took a long time for the software on your PC to figure out, automatically how to connect to a printer, how to make the printer work. I know, because when I had kids in high school and I was traveling, they would call me and say, "Dad, I can't print," right? That stuff happened in droves. And it was because the standards were not quite clear, or because the standards were clear, but some printer companies wanted to differentiate themselves by making it less clear, so you would use their systems only, right? So that happens a bit because it's an early market. Eventually that all gets shaken out, because the ones who play that game go out of business, right? But there are some still playing that game. Okay, so this is all open standard. The cloud up there, right, is designed to look at all these products and make sure they're working correctly, allow you to apply rules to the product so you can set a price. You can set a price at any point in time of the day. You can determine who gets the charge, who doesn't, who's part of your club and gets special pricing, who doesn't pay at all. Whether or not those chargers are available on the weekends or not available on the weekends when you're not there. All those things can be done, not because of the hardware, but because the software is sophisticated enough to be able to do all of that today, right? So you have the ability to do that and control it all. And then you can see variants popping up. Like, for example, here's a rolling rescue vehicle, right, which can be pulled with a pickup truck. And that's a battery with DC fast chargers on board. Why DC fast chargers? Because when you're going to rescue someone, that's when you need to charge it up quickly, right? So they can get on their way, right? Okay, so all of this means is that if you can deliver a system that is intricately tied together, right, is able to seamlessly work and is highly reliable, right? And one of the things I'm going to emphasize here is reliability is not just the hardware. A lot of people make that mistake. The hardware can be up and running, but that hardware has to be connected over a cellular network. So the modems that they use have to be robust. You also want to have diversity of communication. So you might want to have one way to communicate through AT&T, another way through Verizon, another way through T-Mobile, just to not leave anybody out, right? So there are ways to communicate and get back to the data center, because this thing all sits in a cloud, like all software pretty much does today. And that software that sits in the cloud needs to be able to communicate, or it can't manage the chargers. The other thing that a lot of vendors do not do is they do not have independent automatic diagnosis and repair that's managed with, and today this is all managed with machine learning and AI, right? 7/24, 24 hours a day, so you don't have to roll a truck to see what's going on just because you got a complaint from a driver. Everything can be remotely managed, and so all these systems are now have become very sophisticated if you buy the right stuff, okay? All right. Okay, so one of the first things that you have to do, and so, I kind of put myself in your shoes. I said, okay, if I'm starting fresh, what do I need to know? What do I need to do? Well, the first thing you need to ask is, how do I want to use these chargers? What is my goal? Is my goal because I have a fleet to make sure that the fleet is available by morning? And so therefore I want chargers so when everybody plugs in, if somebody brought their car in and forgot to plug it in, it should notify me so I can call that individual and say, go back and plug in your car. Right? It should do that. Or it should notify the individual and say, hey, you didn't plug in your car. So that way you know the fleet's done by morning. Or do you have it in retail? Could this be part of your business model? Right? So one of the things that we do is we do a lot of entertainment venues. So NBC Universal, and specifically Universal Orlando, is one of our customers. They use our systems pretty much exclusively. And we don't have an exclusive contract, but they use it. Because the system provides a lot of these things that we've done, but more importantly, they want to make sure that people are happy, because if it's, Orlando's supposed to be the happiest place on earth. When you land in Orlando, the whole family's supposed to be happy, and everyone is full of joy the whole time that they're there. The last thing they need is to get stuck because somebody's car didn't charge. And so as a result of that, here, or we also have them at Disney Springs, different places like that, we have a situation where we want customers to always feel as though they can get support and help, but more importantly, the system should automatically fix itself so that it can actually deliver. On top of that, however, we have some venues, right? Maybe gaming is a part of this, right? That maybe faster charging isn't your goal, right? Because if faster charging is your goal, then that person's going to leave and say, okay, time for me to go home because my charging is done. But there's always that ability to linger if your charger takes a little more time. So this is a business. I can't tell you what to do. This is your business model, right? But certainly this is an amenity that might be complementary to spending more time in your entertainment areas, right? So that's why I put down here, slower charging lets them stay and play. And that may be very conducive and aligned with your goals in terms of making sure that folks have a good time. Okay? All right. Okay, so that's one. As a part of number one, you got to select the right systems, the right hardware. We talked about it again. I won't linger too much on it. But the goal here is to make sure that there is a continuous flow of different hardware over time, because there will be, right? A lot of you have asked me, by the way, and I do want to get to this, right? Have asked me, what happens when it gets cold? I want to talk about that in a moment. But also you should ask yourself, what happens when suddenly we have more autonomy in the vehicles, right? What happens? Well, over time, there will be hardware that is going to be wireless. It's not there yet, right? We don't have a wireless product because we don't feel it's there yet. But the standards are there. Hardware is being built. We will add a wireless charging capability so that vehicles can just park and immediately be able to charge without having to connect them, right? And honestly, that's also going to reduce the failure of connectors, because that is a problem over time, right? If you have, the best way to eliminate a failure is don't have it, right? So we could just eliminate the connector, and over time, wireless will be more and more popular. Wireless at level 2 will be first. That'll be the most popular because it's low energy transfer, and if you have many parking spaces because you want to keep people in place, right, and you want to make them happy, then you can have wireless charging available across a variety of different things. It will be another variant of level 2 charging, okay, is what wireless is. Okay, so if you have a fleet, you have to make a decision. Do I have an overnight fleet or do I have an emergency management fleet that runs 7x24? They have to come in so that the driver can hand it to the next driver on the next shift and then be able to be on their way. So if you have, let's say, a Ranger, right, and you have limited vehicles because you have different shifts for Rangers, you probably want to have DC fast chargers to fuel those up quickly. But if you have overnight fleets, right, where you're going to have folks that are doing out maintenance, et cetera, those can be managed overnight. And maybe there's a combination. Maybe you have some locations that your fleet goes to that are far enough away where they can't make it there and back during the day. So you might want to have one DC fast charger so that when you send the maintenance trucks to those places, they can fuel within 20 minutes while they're doing their work, and then they can come back with no problem, right? So this is all about understanding how it fits into your business model, understanding what you want out of it, and that will help you make good decisions as to what hardware you choose, right? Okay. Let's talk about also something which is a way to save money without having to spend a lot of time and effort upgrading things prematurely. One of the things that has hampered the deployment of EV charging is electrical upgrades that are required in order for all chargers to charge at the same time. So the beauty of software is software can do a lot of magical things. So this is a magical thing that software does here, and it enables you to have some chargers operate at full rate so long as the other ones are not being used. As soon as other chargers are required, in other words, they plug in, you can actually distribute the power amongst all the chargers so that if today you can deploy 10 chargers at full rate, right? And you're okay with that for the next 12 or 18 months. But then you make a decision that says, hey, those electric vehicles are really working out. Now what we need is, let's double it. Let's do 10 more. You don't necessarily have to do all the heavy infrastructure upgrades right away. You can get those new 10 vehicles plugged in and charging. So long as they have time overnight, you can effectively charge them all without spending a lot of extra money installing. So here's just an example. So here I've got a customer that's got 6 chargers that they want to deploy, and each one of these chargers are 32 amps, but they only have 100 amps available to them. So you can see that 32 times 3 is already 96 amps, right? And so you're going to have breakers that are there, but you have 100 amps. So first car comes in, they take 32 amps. Second car comes in, they take an additional 32 amps. So you can see at the other side, it's adding up. They went from 32 being used at the panel to 64. You had a third car, okay, now we're at 96 total amps because they're each getting 32, right? Full rate, everybody's happy. Fourth car comes in, and now the system says, okay, wait a minute. You guys that are all operating at 32 amps, I want you to come down to 25 amps so that I can let the fourth person in at 25 amps. Everybody gets 25 amps, but we're still at 100, right? We haven't exceeded the power, so there was no need to upgrade the panel or do any of that. If we add another one, then it will divide again. If we add another one, it will divide again. All 6 are connected. Now, let's say the first one gets a full battery. When the battery is full, it recalculates and it says, hey, okay, now I see that. Let's go back to the prior stage where 5 were connected and 5 need to charge, not 6. Okay? All of this is done with the magic of the software, right? And so if you choose the right system, and that's the point I want to make here, you can save yourself costs in upgrade. And by the way, I'm hoping you begin to see that the training for the individuals that are installing and speccing the systems for you or for others, right, really needs to be good training, right? Because if you don't get this right, then the breakers are tripping and people are mad and you're not getting what you want, et cetera. So one of the things that we look forward to is being able to train, right? You can see I love teaching, right? So this is my thing. And so I really enjoy, being able to enable people to do this for themselves, right? So I look forward to that. Okay. All right. The other thing that the software can do, and I'm beginning to show you a lot of software stuff now because the system is really brought together and integrated with the software. With the software, we can actually allow you to then define rules to get you more revenue streams. Like, for example, you can make it so that people, it's free parking, they're only paying for the energy up until their battery's full. But hey, when the battery's full, they should get a notification that says, hey, your battery's full, please move your car, or you may get the valet person to move the car for them as well. But either way, it's got to be moved. If they don't move, you can set a rule that says, okay, I'm going to charge you now parking, right? And some of our customers, by the way, you might be surprised at this, but some of our customers said, yeah, that's probably worth $1 a minute. That became $60 an hour, right, for parking. So it's an incentive to move the car and enable someone else to come in and buy more energy, right? Because you want to keep that vending machine running, right? Otherwise you don't. You can also do location-based advertising, and I'm going to say that now. I'll show you in a minute. But there's an app that typically goes with starting of the charge. Whenever there's an app and someone has to look at it, there's an opportunity to put some advertising in place and draw people into your venues, right? Who are the latest concerts? Where is it? Where's the open air? I spent a lot of time in North Carolina. I know the Native American Open Air Theater, right? Where's the latest open air theater, right? All of that is part of what you can do as a part of this. And then eventually the utility is going to want to pay you in order for them to kind of dumb it down, right? Because if the electric grid is being overtaxed in some way, you may want to dumb it down, and they'll pay you for that in some venues, right? The other good thing is if you're setting up your energy independence and you're running your own grid eventually, right? The good news is your operational people can dumb these chargers down automatically, either at set times or even, if you have to hit the emergency button, right? They'll come down, right, and reduce their charge or stop their charge altogether, depending on what you want to do, all with the magic of the software, all right? And then eventually there will be a carbon credit market, right? I think that's been talked about a lot, and it only makes sense that polluters buy credits from the people that are generating, green technologies and green benefits. So I think that carbon credit markets will be built up, and carbon credits will be tradable eventually, and that will come from the software as well. Okay? And so once again, you can differentiate your loyal players, right, loyal customers, from those that, and enable them to get free charging if that's what you want, right? Okay, this is a location-based ad. So you can see there's typically an app that has a map, allows you to find a charging station, right? On that, you can get your own advertising on there. You can allow major brands to advertise. All of this is location-based advertising, controlled by the cloud. We run the system for you, right? And you'll be able to then determine what the charging is, what is served up to the individuals based on what they're doing and based on where they are. It's location-based because we know where you are when you're connected to a charging station. It's as simple as that. So the establishments around the area, your establishments could pull them in, because if you have to stop and charge and you have to be somewhere 40 minutes, you may as well go have a drink somewhere or go have a snack, right? All of that is viable and capable. All right. The last thing here, just to emphasize reliability, using software as the basis for ensuring that chargers are healthy and chargers are delivering what they're supposed to do enables you to have a system where you can avoid rolling a truck unnecessarily. That doesn't mean truck rolls go away. Every once in a while, a piece of hardware does fail. These are computing devices with high voltage sitting out in the elements, right? And so as a result of that, they do fail. Sometimes they get hit by trucks. Sometimes somebody's got a big high truck and it goes right over the bollards and right through the charging station. That happens as well, right? So because you don't know what's going to happen to these things, you will eventually have to roll a truck and replace a unit. But you shouldn't have to roll a truck to replace a unit that is readily, remotely fixable, and you shouldn't have to have human beings trying to fix things remotely when software can do it automatically today. Okay? All right, so with that said, I want to open it up for questions. I'm not sure exactly how much time we got. It looks like we got about 10 minutes. How much? Right now?
Yeah, 10 minutes till the break's over.
Oh, 10 minutes till the break's over. Okay, well. Okay, so James and I are at the booth. I want to encourage you guys to come by, ask questions. By the way, those of you that ask me what happens at negative 24 degrees, right? It's pretty negative, right? And let me explain why. Most of the advertising done by the OEMs, it gives you battery diminishment down of what happens down at 20 degrees Fahrenheit, right? When you go down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit, then it goes down further. So at 20 degrees Fahrenheit, different cars will go down 10%, 15%, the battery will go down that much. If you go further down in temperature, then you're into 25 to 30% territory. The nearest thing, it's hard to get information on this, so I had AI help me, of course, right? So I don't think Elon can get mad since I use Grok, right, to do it. It looks like by the time you get to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, negative 24 degrees Fahrenheit, I think was the last question that I had, it's looking like, depending on the car, 50 to 60% reduction in battery capacity. So if you got a full battery at 100 kilowatts in the summer, that battery at negative 24 degrees Fahrenheit is only going to give you about 40 kilowatts worth of mileage that you normally would have gotten out of 100 kilowatts, okay? So what the OEMs suggest are things that you may or may not want to do. Like, for example, turn off your heater inside. Some of them do better with heating inside because they're heat pump based. Some of them are pure resistance heating. They use up more battery. The battery itself has to be conditioned to keep it at a temperature to keep it running properly. And so all that's using energy. So turn off your internal blower. It's the fan on your blower that uses the most amount of unnecessary energy. You turn on your seat heater and your steering wheel heater. That's the answer. My response to that is you're going to be very uncomfortable sometimes, and you might want to consider whether pure battery electrics are ready for that kind of cold, or are you better off with a plug-in hybrid, right? That would be a statement I would make, and I just made it on YouTube, so I'm sure I'll get a call from somebody.
All right.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Oscar Rodriguez, NovaCharge. We're going to do some things here, 3 things real quick. First one is if you have any questions, go ahead and go see them back at their booth. There's still some time to register for that other device that they're going to raffle off. That's number 1. Number 2, hey, ma'am, hold your popcorn up. Hold the popcorn up. Yeah, okay. Give a big shout out to, go see Renewable. They are sponsoring our break back there. Be sure to go by, tell Amy thank you. Go back there, get your popcorn, get your drinks back there. Do me a favor over here. Give it up one more time for production. Yes, Seminole Media Production. Do me a favor. We're just going to be like just 5 minutes late. So if you can go ahead and lock me in for 14 minutes, start that clock if you can. We'll be right back in here ready to go again at 2:45, okay? So let's go. Go get your popcorn. Go back there, see NovaCharge back there. They're still registering stuff back there. And for the raffle tickets back there. We'll see you right back in here in about a good 15. All right, let's go. And if you have any questions for James or Oscar, you can ask them out there at their booth. Let's go.
mics, man.
You want to go? Should I introduce you?
You introduce.
Yeah.
You introduce me.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Good afternoon. Everybody's in a post-lunch slump, kind of tired. Everybody saw the candy out there? I'm high on Kit Kats right now, guys. I'm having such a good time. All right, are you ready for the raffle? Yeah, I'm so sorry, I can't hear it all up here. Are you ready for the raffle? Yes, thank you. All right, we have Oscar from NovaCharge right behind us. He's gonna be pulling, and sir, you're gonna come up and you're announced. Again, we have,
Terry.
yeah, oh, Terry, here you go, Terry. One there.
Okay.
Terry, what we got?
All right, guys, the winning number is 268. 268. They said you got to be here to win.
Yeah.
Got to be present. Do you have a winner? We got a winner, guys. Congratulations. It's good confirmed, right?
Wow. Okay.
All right.
All right, we have a winner.
Congratulations.
All right. Hey, big shout out to NovaCharge. Let them hear you. Round of applause. Thank you, NovaCharge. Yeah, no worries. Let's go ahead. Come on in here. Get ready for our final round of sessions here, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Hey, Jessica, are you in the house? You with us, Jessica? How you doing? It's good to see you. Man. Did I see you earlier today or no? Okay, I didn't think so. Gosh dang it. I'm a big fan. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's all come in here, have a seat. Let's get this bad boy ready to go here. This young lady comes to us from MHA Nation. Very proud of you, Jessica, for all the hard work that you do. Jessica Eagle Bluestone, complexity of, geothermal development in indigenous communities. Tribal energy leader and policy associate over at the Geothermal Rising. I hope I'm saying that right. Jessica, I'm so honored to have you here. Let's welcome her to the stage. I'd like to turn this portion of the program over to you, and we are going to have a good time. You got everything lined up there?
Hello. We'll see if we can make up a little bit of time here. Yes, so my name's Jessica Eagle Bluestone. I'm the Tribal Community Engagement Lead, and I also work on the state and federal policy team at Geothermal Rising. My background is oil and gas, so there's a pretty seamless transition between the oil and gas industry and the geothermal industry, since there's a lot of technological overlap in researching the subsurface and a lot of the tools that are used underground. So, sorry. Hello? Okay, Geothermal Rising is the largest and oldest geothermal membership organization in the world. We promote all geothermal technologies and applications, so from home heat pumps all the way to supercritical geothermal that is currently in the research phase. We work to empower the geothermal community. We hold conferences, and provide a lot of opportunities for education exchange and disbursement. And we engage with communities. One of our primary goals is to familiarize the general public with geothermal energies across the spectrum. We also do a lot of policy work at both the state and federal level. We recently branched out into Canada, so now we're the primary trade organization for the United States and Canada. So what is geothermal energy? Geothermal energy, or geothermal heat, is heat from the Earth's interior, either residual heat left over from the Earth's development, or radioactive decay, or gravitational pressure. Geothermal energy is the resource exploitation by humans. Some attributes of geothermal energy. You're sitting on top of the resource, so there isn't really a need for transporting fuel, and it has a very small footprint. It's a proven resource. The surface facilities have been similar since geothermal started being used for electricity in Italy in 1913. Of course, there's been a lot of advancements, but the surface equipment is very, very robust in development. It has a 90% capacity factor, and it's a baseload resource. It pairs well with other renewables. When the sun is shining and it's warmer out, geothermal energy is slightly less efficient than it would be at night when it's cooler, so pairing those together makes a lot of sense and bolsters both resources. And the supply chain is largely domestic. There aren't very many other resources where outside of the turbine, you can source everything from within the United States. There's minor greenhouse gas emissions. In some technologies, there are no emissions at all in closed loop systems, which we'll learn about more here in a bit. And like I said, very small footprint. So geothermal is down there in the gray. This is the amount of surface land in comparison to other renewable resources and coal that you would need to develop the same quantity of energy. So we're going to talk about some of the applications of geothermal. From low temp to high temp. Low temp is kind of under 122 degrees Celsius, mid temp up to 300. So the application that most of us are probably familiar with is home heat pumps. Many buildings in our communities already have geothermal heat pumps. And that's just exchanging heat with the ground, usually at a temperature of about 55 degrees. So in the winter, you're heating from 55 up to a comfortable temperature. So instead of heating from 20 degrees up to 68, you're reducing the energy that you need. And in the summer, it works fantastic for air conditioning. There's also geothermal district energy systems. These are, they've been around for hundreds of years. The current longest, most active one is in Boise, Idaho, and it provides a lot of heat for their downtown area. But if you look, you can kind of see how it works that, laser. There we go, laser. So you're bringing up warm water from the well, and it's circulating through buildings, and the cool water is returning back to be re-injected, and it just goes like that all throughout the district. Some additional low temp applications, food processing. Greenhousing is a pretty big one. Aquaculture, so you can use it to farm fish. If you're looking at electricity, these are some cascading use options that you could add on to a project. And spa and wellness. So if you guys are familiar with like the Blue Lagoon in Iceland, like you see all the like pictures of that like super pretty blue water, that's from a geothermal power plant. So some high temp information here. This is a dry steam power plant. So this is like our traditional geothermal power plant that you would think of like near a volcanic margin. So West Coast for the United States, this is where these are more abundant. So the steam is just coming up, turning the turbine, and then being re-injected. And then you have flash steam power plant where you're bringing up water. So this is steam coming up. In this case, you're bringing up water, and then the lower pressure is causing that to flash steam in this compartment, and it turns the turbine and generates electricity and goes onto the grid. So this next one is where things are growing, where there's more interest and what's opening up geothermal to a larger geographic area, and that's binary cycle power plants. So with this one, you can bring temperatures, like you could bring water up that isn't hot enough to flash steam, and it goes through a heat exchanger, and and there's a working fluid that flashes at a much lower temperature than water, and that's what turns the turbine and generates the electricity. And then the water is re-injected. So in all of those, re-injection is very important. So those are examples of the surface plants, and we're going to look at the subsurface a little bit. So this is hydrothermal system, like we have already, like in California, where you have a production well and an injection well. You don't really have to have you don't really have to do much to modify the reservoir in order for it to produce electricity. There's a lot of research in this area, closed loop systems. There are systems like this that are putting electrons on the grid now. In Germany is where they have the first active prototype. And there's some being built in Canada, some being built in the United States, but none of those are producing electricity yet. This next one is enhanced geothermal system, and this is a man-made reservoir. So you drill like you would be drilling like an oil and gas well, and this one doesn't really show that there are laterals, but there would be you would drill laterally within a formation and then stimulate the rock. So that creates a larger surface area for the water to flow through, and then it's pumped back up, and the larger surface area allows for more heat. And then this last one is not something that is operational yet. And this is supercritical geothermal. This is a huge research area, and the reason that this doesn't work yet is the tools that we use for drilling and pumping, they can't handle the temperature and pressure in order to develop this yet. But there's a lot of work going into advancing that. So these right here, these three, are considered next-gen geothermal. And this is conventional geothermal. So I wanted to take another look at the closed loop. system, like in the last one. So this is completely encased. There's no fracturing. It's all just pipes, like underground. So there are some where it's like this radiator style, and then there's others where it's kind of like a single borehole where you're pumping cold water down the center and it's coming in contact with the rock, and then you're pumping up the warm water, and then it just kind of stays in that borehole. So this is a map of existing projects in the United States. Everything is primarily focused in the West, and the green is next generation geothermal projects. So there's a lot that will be coming online like in the next couple years. And the orange is conventional geothermal. There is a bit of a movement with some companies to find blind conventional geothermal. And that takes a lot of geology studies in order to decide where you're going to target. It is kind of like wildcat wells in the oil and gas industry, where you have a lot of evidence and we're going to try it out. And the company that's doing that has been successful, and they still plan on continuing. So with EGS, it opens up the map of where you can develop geothermal. So previously, everything was focused on the west side of the United States, but with advancing technology, better drilling techniques, better working fluid, more money being put towards geothermal study, this is a new map that came out this month from the National Laboratory of the Rockies. And you can see that across a lot of the United States, you can likely develop geothermal, an enhanced geothermal system across most of the United States, and it would be economically viable. So the growth of geothermal in the next couple years for next-gen geothermal. So this is projected between 2025 and 2050, and it's a global chart. We have the United States right here, so we're planning to scale up, and we can take care geothermal can take care of a lot of the heating and cooling needs and electricity that is increasingly being demanded by the grid. Some areas of concern. Water contamination is one that we hear a lot. Everything is, of course, mitigated. Accidents are very few and far between. I'm not even sure of any recent ones. But for the most part, the water that is in the system is municipal water. Unless you're using an aquifer, which there are some systems that do use aquifers. So this reduces the risk of water contamination as far as drinking water, and well bores are also cemented off in areas where there's a risk of polluting drinking water. Induced seismicity is another big one that we hear a lot about. So this is mitigated by careful reservoir management. You want to ensure that you're not overpressurizing your reservoir, so you're injecting and drawing water at a rate that doesn't disrupt the formation. So we have this green light, or the stoplight system, and it's the traffic light protocol for monitoring and managing induced seismicity risk. So if you're at a green, you're operating normally, business as usual. Yellow, there's minor seismicity, and you need to adjust your operation. And red is an elevated risk, and you have to stop operation in order to ensure that you don't have a seismic event. Visual obstructions is another one we hear a lot, and that is kind of an interesting one because even though it is a clean, renewable energy, people typically don't want to like have a plant or look at a plant. Like it hits differently than like a big solar field. Like everyone kind of like wants that picture of a big sprawling solar field instead of like an industrial looking plant, even though it's not taking up as much land. So no real fix for that one. So number 4 is probably the biggest concern that I hear from Native communities, and that is hot spring degradation. So the industry previously had incidents, like back in the 70s, 80s, where they mismanaged reservoirs and did cause hot springs to disappear. However, there's been a lot of advancements and a lot of learning since then, and that is not a very likely risk anymore. Everything that is taken out needs to be returned back into the reservoir, and sometimes municipal water is used to kind of make up the gap between what's lost in energy generation and just ensuring that the reservoir is recharged. So hot springs are an incredibly important resource. They're typically cultural sites. Most hot springs that you would come across have a story behind it, or a place that like a tribe went to pray, and it's something that kind of exists globally, and that's one of the big efforts now is to ensure that hot springs are protected. And also, they are environments for thermophiles, so little microbes. So you really want to protect the surface to ensure that that ecosystem stays intact. If you're familiar with like CRISPR from, they found the microbes for that in Yellowstone, and they use it for analyzing DNA. And extraction of rare earth minerals. So this is often seen as a positive because you can, they're economically valuable. Depending on how you have your system set up, you can set it up to extract minerals from the water. So another barrier, so back to that other slide, a lot of that can be addressed with the general public if someone's interested in developing a project with advanced community engagement and opportunities for education for people to learn what's actually happening rather than kind of doing some like research themselves where it might not be as factual. Misinformation is really hard to fight once people kind of grab onto that. So early community engagement, project community engagement is incredibly important. So some challenges, high initial cost. It makes it kind of difficult for attracting investors. The longevity of geothermal systems definitely makes up the cost over time, but it definitely is something that is difficult for a lot of people and communities to pay for upfront. Rising costs of exploration. You have to drill a hole, of course, and a lot of that comes from like the oil and gas industry, so you're kind of paying similar rates for drilling an oil and gas well because they're doing the exact same thing, and those can be quite expensive. And yeah, just unlike other energy resources, many costs occur early in the exploration and development. So this is a chart of risk and how much money you're spending. So when the risk is high, like that the project is not going to be viable, you're not spending very much money for this phase. But then you get to like exploration drilling, and it's still very high. Like you don't know if the resource is going to have like the water chemistry that you need in order to make it work, or if it's going to have the temperature that you want in order for your project to be viable. But if it is, then your project is significantly de-risked, and then you start going into production drilling, and with any type of work in the subsurface, there still is a risk during that phase. And then once you get to building like your surface facilities and operating, that's where your costs are much higher. Building the power plant is quite significant. But by then, the risk is not very high. Levelized cost of electricity. So right now, the hydrothermal plants, they are significantly, the energy produced there is significantly less than EGS plants right now, but that's expected to reduce in the next few years. And we should be seeing that a bit more in the next, in the next couple of years, a reduced levelized cost of electricity. So how do you get a project initiated? First, you need the pre-feasibility study, low cost, high impact. Do you have a resource? Do you control the resource? Is it worth developing? Is there enough heat? Is it hot rock, aquifer? There's a lot of data out there that you can get access to. There's a lot of state websites. So a lot of geothermal data is derived from oil and gas data. So you can access a lot through state websites. The DOE has information that you can gather. DEMD, state surveys, universities, there's a number of places that you could reach out to and get free data on your land. And then you have to know who controls the resource. This is where it gets like a bit more complicated on reservations, especially if you're in an area that's checkerboarded, because some states have geothermal as a surface right, and federal land, tribal land, it is a mineral right. So then you're kind of going from like surface mineral, surface mineral, surface mineral, and that can get a bit convoluted. Finding a buyer. There is a pretty big shift into developing data centers with geothermal behind the meter. And there's like 3 or 4 deals out there right now with like Meta and Google partnering with geothermal companies for behind the meter data center energy. And then, of course, transmission. So you have to have all of this in place before you move forward. Some places that you can get some technical assistance. The National Laboratory of the Rockies. Faith, if you can raise your hand. So Faith Smith back here. She did a presentation on transmission earlier, and she focuses on transmission and geothermal energy, and she can help direct you to more resources. I believe these links are still accurate. And then DEMD, of course, offers some technical assistance, and so does the Office of Indian Energy for geothermal. Some free high-level resource maps that you could take a look at to kind of get a general idea of what a potential resource looks like. Are right here. So this is a map done by Project Innerspace, and then there's a NLR Energy Atlas that you can also take a look at. So a lot of what we do at Geothermal Rising focuses on policy. And I'm not going to go through the bills here, but the primary purpose of this slide is to show this column here, where it's the sponsors. So geothermal has largely bipartisan support. It's a renewable resource, so Democrats typically support it, and it has some crossover with oil and gas technology and oil and gas workers, so it is also widely supported by Republicans. And because of this, Public Law 1921, or the OBB, it didn't get cut the same way that a lot of the other technologies did. So the phase out for the production tax credit and the investment tax credit are still in place for geothermal at 100% until 2033 before it starts to phase out. This adjustment extends it by, well, it extended it by 3 years from the initial phase out date, because the initial phase out date was 2030. So it got an additional 3 years at 100%, and then it phases out. In addition to that, the Geothermal Technologies Office got a significant increase in their budget, and hopefully that transfers into them making grants available for feasibility studies, exploration wells, but we're waiting still to see like what comes about with that. So some of our upcoming events. Geothermal Rising, we hold a lot of conferences to just inform more people about geothermal, and then also the geothermal professionals to communicate their ideas. So Thermal Energy Network Symposium is coming up in March. If anyone's interested in that, that's in Baltimore. We have an investment forum in Houston, along with a technical symposium. They overlap. So that would give you a very, very strong technical basis in geothermal, as well as give you an opportunity to kind of learn about funding mechanisms. Our Capitol Hill Day, we spend a lot of time in the policy space, so we fly out there with our members and talk to a lot of congressional offices. And then the primary event that I work on is the Indigenous Geothermal Symposium. So we've had 2 already. Our first one was in Hawaii. Our last one was in Reno this past October. And we're pairing up with the World Geothermal Congress in Calgary, Canada, in June. So if anyone is interested, I can give you more information on that. It's an international event, and we have people from like Taiwan, New Zealand, Kenya, Canada, and it's growing, so it's quite interesting. And then our primary conference is in September in Houston. Okay, thank you.
You know, this is actually crazy. You know, she's MHA, and normally we're long-winded, but she actually did. She got us caught up. Holy smokes! Hey.
I said I'd do it.
I know. Okay, here we go.
Your chart on costs and risk was from 2012. Have you been able to incorporate any cost impacts that the plasma drilling technology has on the exploration phases?
Not yet. So that's a good thing to bring up. There's a company out there called Quaise, and they have a technology where they kind of vaporize the rock instead of like drilling. It is quite a bit slower than drilling with a bit, so your like daily rate for a rig would go up. But they're definitely making advancements that will speed that up.
Thank you for that really informative presentation. I just have a quick question. Because geothermal is so new, what kind of education do you see as a need for tribal communities who are interested in getting into geothermal?
There are a couple of programs out there through universities. If someone's interested, I can get you in touch with that. But in order for geothermal to be successful in Indian country, we definitely have to do a lot of internal capacity building, especially with plant operation, because it would be something that I think communities would want to manage. So there's a lot of education that needs to be done there, and I'm hoping that more people are like natives get into geothermal like as a science. If anyone's interested or anyone has kids that are interested, encourage them to go into this space. It's really interesting, and I know like one other native that works in geothermal, and I'd like there to be more.
I was just going to ask you after anyway, but I thought I'd ask the crowd. Leading up to your that question about jobs, and let's say like a geothermal plant, base load, 100 megawatts or something, that I think it's something that's attractive to tribes is, like you said, the operating a power plant versus like PV, utility scale. There's not many, people that work there versus a power plant. And I was trying to look at some things like how much, let's say one, a conventional one, how many people they employ like full time, or, just for comparison, because that is very attractive to tribes for job creation.
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure how many people you need per well. Like normally there's like 1 or 2 people that are in an office for kind of each, I guess, section of wells, and they're continuously monitoring the pressures and how much is being produced out of those wells. And then you typically have someone on site that's going and ensuring that the surface equipment is operating the way that it's supposed to, and that there isn't any like maintenance. So it's not a tremendous amount of jobs unless you're doing a enormous complex.
All right. Jessica Eagle Bluestone, another round of applause. MHA, very own. Here's all her information if you want to throw that up there real fast. She'll be around a little bit. You're going to be around for a while? Okay, so if you have any other questions and whatnot, she'll be able to answer that. Very proud, thankful for you, Jessica. I learned from my daughter today, don't tell women that you're proud of them. Don't tell them that. You just say, hey, you keep killing it. Good grief. Bless you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move right on here. Innovation of energy, tribal energy, alternatives, fellows, lightning, paths forward. I'm going to let you guys kind of come up here and do all this, introduce your titles and all that. So let's please, because we just want to keep this thing rolling. Angelica Wright, come on up here. Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. Fawn R. Sharp, Quinault Nation. Make your way up here. Man, we need a smoke machine for these ladies, and also for Kenneth Pete. Come on up here. Shoshone Paiute Tribe. Make your way up here. I'll let you guys introduce yourself. Jasmine Lamb. Come on up here. Passamaquoddy Tribe at Pleasant Point. I hope I said all that right. And then Josiah Jacobs, Pit River Tribe. Let's give them all a round of applause. Round of applause. Let them hear you. And if there's anybody here that I'm missing out, are we looking? You got them? Okay, so we just kind of let y'all go, facilitate this, and keep this going and flowing. Here we go.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Angelica. I'm a citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, and I currently serve as Tribal Energy Alternatives Director of Tribal Education and Workforce Development. At T, we are a GRID affiliate, so GRID Alternatives is a national nonprofit where we strive to be able to serve tribal communities. We have two co-executive directors, Tongshi Claremont and Talia Martin. And our work through Tribal Energy Alternatives has been a long-standing opportunity for us to be able to provide capacity building with funding, education, and on-site construction. As a part of our programming, we have been able to create opportunities for we have been able to engage with philanthropic funding to help support scholarships, internships, and additional experiential learning opportunities. One of our biggest investments thus far has been into our Tribal Energy Innovators Fellowship. As we begin to talk about what renewable energy means and tribal renewable energy as a industry and as a field, it's incredibly important to remember that this work that does not happen without Native people at the forefront. It does not happen without our land, our resources, or our people. And so making sure that we have programming that is dedicated to the diversity of renewable energy has been a pillar in Tongshi Claremont's work as well as my own work. And in 2019, we were able to begin our fellowship. I'm not even entirely sure how to move this forward. Okay. So let me back up. So Tribal Energy Alternatives officially became an affiliate this past year in 2025. In 2025, we were able to bridge some of our programming that was taking place at GRID Alternatives through the support of our Tribal Solar Accelerator Fund, which provides residential and facility grants up to $200,000, as well as capacity grants for training and to support tribes bringing in tribal energy jobs. We also have an energy planning grant of $50,000. With that philanthropic side, we also have an on-site traveling construction crew that helps to support the development of solar energy projects, as well as the actual installation where we provide on-site hands-on training. And a part of our team mission is to really be able to see how that the community-powered solutions to help really be able to look at environmental justice and sustainable energy through this tribal lens. We come across a number of projects throughout our time. Our construction crew has been around since 2010, and they have been engaging with, I believe, over 1,000 trainees over this time. A big part of our philosophy is to make sure that these are solutions and ideas created by the community, so we are oftentimes approached to be doing this work. And with our Tribal Energy Innovators Fellowship, it began in 2019 and 2020. And this was our first fellowship, and it started off so small, in a small way of it's not small, but it started off with $5,000 grants. And these were $5,000 grants that was dedicated towards individuals throughout Indian country who were supporting different parts of solar at the time. We saw the overall interest grow of this fellowship, and with that, so did the amounts. Our fellowship went from a $10,000 investment into individuals to $25,000 into a current $50,000, where our model moved from a 12-month model to an 18-month model. So this program has been a highlight of my career because I've seen what it means to be able to invest in individuals. The brilliance and the ideas that come from creativity and innovation and the solutions are really within our own community members, and their hearts and dedication to this work has shown time and time again. For our 2024 cohort, it began off as a kind of new model, this 18-month model, and we are now actually concluding. So at the end of February, next month, we will be transitioning out from this current cohort. And when I thought about ways to celebrate that cohort, I thought about reaching out to the Native Learning Center. And Brooke and team were so warm and welcoming at this idea of having a goodbye celebration moment for this cohort here, which just means so much to me because I've gotten to really enjoy their work and their tenacity and their heart that they have poured into it. Every single one of these individuals up here has really shown me something, taught me something. Unfortunately, Saxon, he could not come today. He is Osage. He is the founder of 8th Generation Consulting, and he assists with different contract services. He has his general contract license in a multitude of states, but he is now a professor and had to go teach a class tonight, so he was unable to make it. So we certainly do miss him, but he has a lot of great work and presence online that I definitely encourage you to check out. For this session, I really, really want to make sure that we have the opportunity for you to know who our fellows are. Before I introduce that to you as well, I do have some fellows who have also been at this conference, so it's been really great to see them as well. I have David Wabenese in the back sitting there, and then Rowena, she presented earlier today, and Stephanie Bostwick was actually one of our first fellows and has been a great mentor to see how some of these programs can come alive. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our fellows to go ahead and introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fawn Sharp. I'm a citizen of the Quinault Indian Nation and a descendant of the Confederated Tribes of Salish Kootenai in Montana and the Yurok tribe in Northern California. I'm happy to be here.
Josiah Jacobs here with the Pitt River Nation. Tribal Council too as well, and I run the Tribal Employment Department for the Pitt River Nation.
Kenneth Pete Jr. with the Shoshone-Paiute Tribes of the Duck Valley Indian Reservation, the Renewable Resource Manager and our Greenhouse Manager for the tribe.
Dilly was Jasmine Lim. I'm from the Passamaquoddy Tribe at Pleasant Point. I'm the co-director of the Zabayag Resilience Committee, and I'm also a PhD candidate in environmental science at the University of Maine.
And then can you all go ahead and share just a little bit more about why you wanted to pursue this fellowship and what you've been doing through this time, through these 18 months?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. And I can't believe 18 months is already over. It seems like we all just met, right? So I am coming up on 2 years in April of concluding a 28-year career in tribal law and policy. I served as an elected official of my nation for 18 years, 6 terms, and I spent a lot of my time, both as an attorney and a tribal leader, working on international law and policy with the United Nations and on the climate crisis. I attended my very first Conference of Party Global Climate Negotiations in 2008. That was right after Obama was elected, but before he was sworn in. And there was a great deal of hope and optimism at that time that the United States would finally come to the table and bear its responsibility for addressing the climate crisis. And in that first term, I was elected in 2006, so that was my second year in elected office. I was confronted with multiple states of emergency within my own community. We're located on the coast of Washington State, vulnerable to sea level rise. The place where my ancestors signed our treaties with the United States is now underwater. We had millions of sockeye salmon return to the Quinault in the 50s and 60s. The year I got elected, we only had 3,000 return. I took helicopter flights over the Olympic Mountains, saw the glaciers that feed the mighty Quinault River are disappearing. And so you could imagine a young tribal leader back then who had a lot of hope and optimism that the United States would honor its treaty and trust commitments, would understand and recognize we have this climate crisis and would do something about it. The following April, when Obama did announce to the world through a special envoy that there's simply no political will inside the United States, that early time in my presidential tenure, I realized If we don't do something, no one else is going to. And so I would spend the next 2 decades working on international law with respect to the rights of indigenous peoples and partnering with the United States all the way up to joining the US delegation with Special Presidential Climate Envoy John Kerry, who addressed the National Congress of American Indians and said, the future of the planet and the future of humanity's survival is inextricably tied to indigenous leadership in these international places. And so it was very clear to me that we definitely have a role in international policy and international climate finance. But no matter where I went in these circles, no one was putting dollars behind supporting indigenous peoples and tribal nations. And in my last tenure at the National Congress of American Indians, we worked very hard to secure funding for tribes in the Inflation Reduction Act. At that time, $500 million was dedicated to tribes. You divide that among 570, now 5 nations, that's less than $1 million. My villages need 500 million to move to higher ground. So in my last term, it was quite clear to me, we need global scale access to finance, access to capital that is not only public, but private and philanthropic. We need blended capital at global scale if we're to meet these challenges. And I think we all know, with regard to public funding here in the United States, we're not gonna see another bill out of the US Congress to support our efforts. We're all trying to, instead of generating revenue by holding the US accountable, we're trying to create for-profit opportunities. I mean, just look at our resorts and our casinos. That's just a fraction of exercising our tribal sovereignty. Imagine global scale opportunities that I believe rightfully belong to tribes. The world knows they need to follow our leadership with regard to environmental stewardship. But no matter where you go, whether it's the US Congress, the United Nations, the World Bank, of the trillions of dollars that's moving throughout the world, very little is coming directly to us. In fact, the UN's best effort is maybe 135 million for all indigenous communities around the world. So I've spent the last 2 years out with this fellowship and with my colleagues and just the camaraderie, going throughout the world on behalf of the World Bank, on behalf of the United Nations. And during this cohort, I was invited to join the World Economic Forum Global Future Council on Natural Capital, which I'll be addressing tomorrow, and our vision for how tribes rightfully take ownership of the large-scale resources that are available internationally, and how we not only access capital and finance, but how we deploy those resources strategically all across Indian country. So that's what I've been up to the last couple of years with this work.
Yeah, we can just keep listening to Fawn for the rest of the time if you guys want to. A lot of information. I used this opportunity to build a food sovereignty project for our tribe and introduce renewable energy with the opportunities that we had. Also develop tribal capacity around this project. So it was just a good opportunity to seize the moment. I had some partners that were talking about it. I said, yeah, I think I have a place where we can put this funding and develop something that's really, really, heartwarming to me and my community. To be able to feed your people is a practice of food sovereignty. So we had a large scale, already a complex, 4-season climate controlled complex that there was no funding. Our tribe isn't like a lot of tribes, we're not really rich out there. So we take the fundings that we can, cobble them together, if it's 50,000, if it's 10,000, whatever it is, and we're developing from that. So I seized the moment to go and clean the facility up. We got some youth crews down there, got everything cleaned up. We're looking to get the solar for all, and all that infrastructure dollars that was coming down was kind of a hit. But we're in the state of California, so we're holding the state obligated to figuring out some infrastructure dollars for us for sure. And we're going to keep moving forward. We also have, on the renewable energy side of things, we have a geothermal well on site. It isn't a very high temp, but I have spoken with Jessica. We've had our tribal chair meet up with those guys and everything that they know when it comes to education on that, and maybe be able to run a facility off of solar and then renewable energy with the geothermal and heat our facility like that. So we're kind of practicing the full scale of sovereignty when it comes to our energy, our food side of things, and then community-based also with our work capacity that we're developing through this. So there's been a few opportunities we've had with First Nations. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of them. They've really been helping out. Obviously, the Grid Alternatives, they did an energy plan with us. We've been able to bring in other funding through BIA, EMDP. We got $400,000 from them, so we've done all of our feasibility for our solar. We're pursuing multiple different grant opportunities so we can get this project off the ground and get it up and running. But that's what I've been doing with this for about the last 18 months, and we're actually starting to plant this April on this facility. So it was a long time coming. When people say you're doing a project like this and it takes about 5 years to really get it up and going, I'm probably going to be at 5 years fully capacity. We're looking for 20 tribal members to be working there. Also, we train all of our tribal members. I do run our employment department, so I did over 200 tribal members trained in multiple different education-wise, multiple different between CPR, first aid, basic 32s for firefighting. We're doing a botany training down there. So, I mean, that's where we're going with this. And the reason why we train those guys is so when we need to fill the capacity, we have our tribal members there to fill those jobs. And we always go for competitive wages too with the way that the world is and that, you know, everything going up in price. It's hard to tell some of our tribal members, hey, go to work for minimum wage. And I can't, you know, see myself being able to survive off of that. So I don't expect any of my tribal members or any tribal members to be able to survive off of that.
So I used this opportunity to help write a strategic plan for our tribe. It was a 10-year plan. We worked with Akana, Matt Hoffman. I can't remember the exact company he's working with, but so it's a 10-year plan. We had multiple community meetings. We got input from the ranchers. We got input from all the employees with the tribe, where they saw our tribe going in the next 10 years with economic development. We don't have a casino, so that was part of it. We're working on that now. And solar, you know, of course the ranchers don't want to see their rangeland for grazing taken up by large solar fields, so we took that into account. So we're looking at alternative options, rooftop solar, covered parking. And then I also was in charge of seeking grants for renewable energy, and as most of you know, that kind of came to a stop. But before all that happened, we were able to secure a few, and I'm working on finalizing a contract with Saxon, who, you know, thankful to this fellowship, I met him, and he actually was the awarding bidder on my project. And I followed everything properly. I didn't let any of my selection panel know. I actually knew who he was, so he just outright won it. So, yeah, so we'll be working on that. It's just a small study. We're going to be doing energy efficiency on some of the housing on the valley, energy audits for ideally every household on the reservation. We're going to be looking at microgrid feasibility studies, and our transmission line, we're going to be doing a full study on that. So we'll be getting that rolling here in the next couple months. And yeah, this fellowship's been great. It's allowed me to work on the renewable energy side. Our tribe really didn't have money for a position for renewable energy, so I still work part-time as the greenhouse manager where we grow native plants. So I spent a lot of time in my off hours working on grant applications, being able to follow up with these community meetings, getting the people involved, and I'm planning on getting our youth involved. I'm going to continue looking for some grants where we could get the youth involved on some of these energy audits, do some minor energy efficiency upgrades on the houses, you know, caulking around the windows, insulation updates possibly. And yeah, so I work with our housing department. I work with the tribe pretty close. and yeah, our leadership supporting this, and we're just gonna keep getting money where we can and continue to build what we can there. We're pretty isolated. We're about 100 miles from any major city. We used to have frequent power outages. It's been better lately, but it still does occur. So that's the Tribal Council's reasoning behind getting into renewable energy, is creating some energy sovereignty. And so we have full support there. We just got to continue working towards it.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to what a lot of people have already said today. I'm from the Passamaquoddy tribe at Pleasant Point, and we're actually the easternmost tribe of the United States. So we're a federally recognized tribe, but we have a lot of issues with the state of Maine not recognizing our sovereignty. So we've haven't experienced the same economic growth or political development as a lot of other tribes have. I hate to do a deficits approach. I always love to focus on the strengths of our community, but we do experience a lot of economic hardships. Obviously, it's cold in Maine, and we are very heavily reliant on oil and fossil fuels, which isn't ideal for the environmental impact. But yeah, those two things together kind of create a lot of high energy burdens for our community. So I really only started my career maybe 5 years ago in 2021. I was a cashier at Walgreens, which, I don't know, like rich people love to laugh at that at the fancy dinners we went to. But as a cashier at Walgreens, I had the opportunity to do a research project with the University of Maine to see about energy and justice in our community. Just kind of looking at, between our Passamaquoddy tribe and the Penobscot Nation, how we've been impacted by energy development and, I guess, development in general, how that's impacted our access to our tribal resources and our traditional homelands. And yeah, from there, we did a community meeting in 2022. I didn't really know very much about energy, but the biggest message that we heard from our tribal members was they're struggling to pay their electric bills. They needed services in their homes. So I guess since that point in August 2022, I founded the Zabaigue Resilience Committee. And then I have my co-director, Jen, and Samara, who's recording me right there too. Woo! But yeah, we're an all-women team. I really appreciate the Grid Alternatives for kind of like investing in me as an individual. In the past 18 months, when we first started, it was during the Biden administration. We were experiencing so many different awesome funding opportunities, and it was, I don't know, it was a hopeful time. Things weren't perfect during that administration, but yeah, we had a lot of opportunities. We got a lot of planning done for what we wanted to do, but like ultimately our tribe just wasn't ready to start implementing those projects. So yeah, I think it was like halfway through the fellowship, my job got terminated by the federal government, or like we lost like $900,000 or something like that through our research project. So the fellowship has really been like helpful for allowing me to pay my rent, and yeah, it's been an incredible journey just getting to know all the different fellows and hear about everyone's different strengths, and also just, you know, getting opportunities like this to hear about what other tribes are doing within their communities. I think it's extremely important to kind of, you know, it has like cascading impacts when you can help support other people within the tribe to become leaders in the community for climate change or energy, because a lot of us don't have a background in that. We're just kind of finding different ways to address the issues that impact us most within our communities.
And with that, hopefully you got to see a little bit of why we love our fellows so much. They each have a bit of a diverse background and what their projects have focused on. And that was intentional. We really wanted to make sure that there was diversity representing these different aspects of energy and how it shows up in our communities. And so with that, I have a few just specific questions for each of the fellows. And for Fawn in particular, you got to travel a lot lately. And one of the other things from your international perspectives is one of the things that I was always so interested in learning too was how the renewable energy aspect and how tribes can maybe participate a little bit more on what's happening on that international scale and what you're seeing.
Excellent questions. Yes, this last 2 years, I don't even know how many countries I've been to. I've been to Southeast Asia, working as an advisor to the World Bank. They determine there's 22 million indigenous peoples that are vulnerable to sea level rise. And so I did a tour through Hanoi, Siem Reap, Cambodia, Bangkok, and from there I went to Bellagio, Italy. The Rockefeller Center has a retreat center on Lake Como. I spent 4 days with my colleagues at the World Economic Forum strategically thinking about natural capital. From there I went to Baku, Azerbaijan. It was the week after the last election in the United States. I mean, what do you say? We knew back then it was likely the U.S. was going to retreat from the Paris Accord and the UNFCCC. We're now the only country that's not part of the global climate framework. And those were things that we knew was on the minds of diplomats, private sector actors, et cetera. And so I was asked to join the Department of Interior and the U.S. delegation to provide hope. And that was my task. How do you provide hope to the global community with those potentials? And I said, Mother Nature doesn't discriminate against anyone, against hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfires. We're all deeply impacted, and Mother Nature doesn't discriminate on abundance. So that was the basic message there. And from there, I went to Doha, Qatar, and then Qatar back to Dallas and back to Seattle. So I went around the world in 15 days. And then following that, I went to London, I went to Geneva, I went to Abu Dhabi, to Geneva, New York, Washington, D.C., back to this whole cycle again of global negotiations. And so the thing that I've come to recognize, and I'm going to talk a little more in depth about this tomorrow, the world is really trying to put a price tag on nature and trying to value nature. And I go back to a teaching of our elders that someday water is going to be more valuable than oil. When I was in 8th grade, that was sort of an assumption, and now it's true. And I make the point that the world is pricing nature based on scarcity. So as water resources shrink and demand goes up, price goes up. But our people historically have valued nature on abundance and sustainability across generations. And so I see the world targeting our landscape, the 80% of biodiversity that's remaining. And while our lands have been taken through mining and all these other practices, they're now seeking to hijack the value, put it in the New York Stock Exchange, empower investors, et cetera. So if we don't step up into those spaces and harness that energy on our terms, so I'll be talking tomorrow about a vision for creating an indigenous platform and finance exchange where we can bring public-private philanthropic investment at scale on our terms, and a price of admission is honoring human and civil rights, things like FPIC. And so that initiative is now supported by the United Nations and the World Economic Forum. And as I said, I'll go into more detail about that tomorrow, but that's how we're going to achieve direct access for renewable energy projects. We don't have direct access to capital and finance, but we have direct access to nature. And we have direct access to centuries of knowledge and wisdom that is absolutely key for the world to navigate its way through this global climate crisis. And I believe it's time. Our ancestors foretold of a day of reckoning. We prepared. We have everything we need in Indian country. And so I'll be happy to share that vision going forward tomorrow. So those are the connections.
And thank you, Fawn, for that. And Josiah has been very intentional with his role supporting workforce development. And something that I've always been interested in when we have our one-on-one conversations is how intentional he has been with how, when projects are being developed, making sure that there was involvement and engagement with youth education and very intentional workforce development. Josiah, can you tell us a little bit more about your process and kind of intents in the way that you've been looking at this project come to life?
Yeah, well, Indian country, you know, we're all Indian here, the majority of us, and we know that lack of employment in rural counties all over the country. It's like, I heard of rates sometimes 80% unemployment. I honestly believe our tribe probably is at that. So when I'm looking at projects, my whole thing is like making sure that we can get tribal people to work, like in some way or form. I mean, we got to stay busy. Our youth needs to stay busy. Our youth needs to get hands-on education. Sometimes we go to the public schools, and you know, I feel like our tribal youth in those public schools sometimes are like, you know, pinpointed as they're not getting the same education as the local, you know, kids that are there of a, you know, Caucasian American or whatever it is there. So for me, it's like, here, we need to figure out a way to get our people trained, get our people employed, and keep them employed and keep them moving. So when I'm looking at a project and I'm looking at funding and I'm going for grant funding or whatever it is, my whole thing is tribal capacity, making sure that those wages are written into those grants, making sure that I'm looking and recruiting the youth. And it's easy nowadays because they're considering youth like 18 to, someone said 28 the other day. I was like, whoa, like I was 28. I don't think people were considering me youth, but I think the federal, it's like 18 to 26 or something like that. So, and I believe like, yeah, at 18, I've seen myself still acting like a kid too, even up to 25. So it does make sense, which it makes it easier for us because it opens up doorways to us. You're going, hey, this is a youth program. Well, it's to me, it really wasn't a youth program, but it is. It's 18 to 25. Let's make sure that we're getting these kids recruited, have them ready to go, get them all their equipment and stuff they need, and make sure that they're prepared to do the job that needs to be done. For instance, with this program we did 3 apprenticeships for the electrics for our greenhouse facility. So we recruited the guys. I had an electrician that was willing to do the apprenticeship program, and I made sure to pinpoint the 3 tribal youth that are going to be there every single day, because a lot of the times the crew that I run, sometimes they don't show up, and I'm lenient with them. When you have other people come in that are training these guys, you want them showing up because the work's got to get done. And so I had to, pinpoint 3 really good youth for that program, and they made sure to show up every single day. Never had any complaint from the electrician. They went through about a 6-month program where they know the whole facility. It's a $1.5 million electric facility. They returned it into, we did $100,000 in electrical work from hydrosodium to LEDs now. Flick of a switch, we got our fans, swamp cooler, everything's up and going. So when it comes to it, it's always about building that capacity. And the reason why we did that program was because now I have 3 people on standby. When we get the facility operating this spring, we have our own tribal people that know that facility, and they can come and do the work for us. So that's always a big thing. We're going to work with the local school as well, with their horticultural class, and we'll bring all the community together as well, because we're bridging the gap of that also. Because, in those Indian, like where I grew up at, like I mentioned before, it wasn't like getting that trust barrier between the other youth and our tribal youth and bringing them together. So we're bringing them together as well to do the horticultural class, design it around our greenhouse facility that we have. So that way they're getting trained. Maybe some of those youth might pick up that ball and take that profession along as well. So it's all about building capacity for me in this project that I've been working on.
Thank you. And KW, every time I talk to him, he's doing some different type of side quest or kind of getting some new opportunity. As with all of our fellows, he's incredibly engaged in his community and interested in what's happening, from getting to hear about him planting trees to getting that CDL and doing all of these different aspects to really think about the benefit of the tribe. You've been a little bit newer into this renewable energy space. Can you talk about, what that's been like over the last 18 months, and you've kind of seen the interest, the beginning interest from Solar for All funding to kind of seeing that dip down and looking at some of those other focuses again on carbon reduction?
Yeah. So, I was fairly new to renewable energy. I still think I am when I started this fellowship. I think I'd only been in this position for about maybe 8 months or a year by then. So I still had a lot to learn, and being part of this fellowship really helped get the connections I needed. And just learning that there's a lot of people out there willing to help tribes, and it doesn't always come at a cost. So taking advantage of any opportunity like that. So yeah, what else? Yeah, I mean, I stay busy around the tribe. I like to. I work in our projects department. So right now we're currently building a new school, which is going to be our K through 12 grade school. Our old school was sitting on a hydro plume, so they decided to move it for obvious reasons. So, but yeah, so now that I've been working in this, I'm learning a lot. I see the need for it. Our people are really interested in renewable energy. They're interested in saving a few bucks on their energy bill, and with this fellowship and the people I've met along the way, it's really been helpful for our tribe. And no, we don't have a lot of economic development. We're working on it, and our current council has been really great pushing towards that. But learning through this fellowship and being able to connect with all the people that I have has been very beneficial to the tribe. And these are connections that I'll continue to work with after I'm done with this fellowship. So very thankful for GRID and the Tribal Energy team for having me be part of this.
And one thing I'd like to highlight too is that we've had a number of our fellows come from backgrounds like KW, Josiah. They're wearing multiple hats quite often, whether they're the air quality guy, environmental health specialist, especially with the funding kind of being fluctuating. We saw a lot of people get tapped into this work who didn't necessarily know like the ins and outs of renewable energy, and that's pretty reflective of a lot of the folks who are now leading in these spaces. And so really taking the opportunities to be able to engage and learn, and KW's done a really great job of making sure that he advocates, he's been in the spaces like as policy was kind of coming down or some of these considerations, and has been a great partner for us, especially as we were looking at Nevada work and Idaho work. A lot of detailed insight as well. And Jasmine has done quite a bit of outreach and engagement throughout the last 18 months, and being able to kind of look at different ways to, really reach communities. Jasmine actually joined me last summer and attended a Midwestern TCU convening, mostly just because she wanted to get out and see what other communities were doing and how that might apply. And so I don't know if, Jasmine, you want to talk a little bit more about what that experience of learning and participating in events and outreach and engagement has looked like?
Yeah. Oh, is this on? Can you hear me? Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess over the past 5 years, and I guess especially since we started the Zabai Resilience Committee, we've really done a ton of community engagement. We actually just finished writing up all the results of our different surveys and community workshops. Just to name a few, last May we did a Power Up workshop with the organization 7 Skyline. We had like over 150 tribal members attend that meeting. We were scared no one was going to show up, and then we were shocked by the amount of people. I think it's a unique skill to do community engagement, and it's a lot harder than it sounds. So maybe 60 people were only there for the raffle because we raffled off an electric bike, but they did end up staying until the end of the meeting, a lot of them, or at least until the raffle call. But we've really tried to invest a lot in doing community outreach, and kind of before we jump into a project, developing our natural resources or something like that to try and get community consensus. So I'm sure that anyone in the room who's ever attempted a renewable energy project or really anything for your tribe knows that you really need to be showing to your community that you are prioritizing the community's needs. and that you're really relying on your own traditional values, because success to an external entity outside of the tribe, like a developer who will really push you to develop these large projects, utility scale projects, that type of success is something completely different than, you know, success in your community, living up to your roles as like just a person in your community, especially as women, where we're the traditional stewards of our environment, yeah, ensuring that future generations have a safe and healthy place to live. But yeah, oh, I'm talking for too long, but I don't know, the community engagement part of it, I think making sure we have community buy-in really ensures that we have long-term success of our energy plan, or else it will just kind of, you know, collect dust on in a drawer somewhere. But
Thank you. And so we are nearing the end of our time. I know I have a million more questions from my fellows as well. I'll give us all a second to ask here in a moment. I did want to wrap up by letting you know that we do have some additional funding opportunities. We will be announcing our fellowship ideally in the spring, so keep a lookout for when that application will be announced for our next round of cohorts. Beyond that, we also offer scholarships for students who are at TCUs, 2, 4, and graduate level, and those are $5,000 scholarships to individuals. We are really open. We don't necessarily make it only to a specific STEM area. We want to encourage folks who are looking at policy or looking at more of those other administrative roles to also apply. We are looking to make sure that we're supporting folks who want to be in renewable energy or see that energy connection. In addition to that, we do have a rolling basis application for renewable energy kind of training, and so that is training that's external to us, and that's for folks. It has an up to a $1,500 limit for individuals who may be interested in some support, such as we've had all sorts of requests, from new shoes to car issues happening to wanting to get some new glasses and some new clothes and just some of those additional things that folks may need. That's a good scholarship for those who might be enrolled in apprenticeship programs or other, you know, trainings, kind of as we heard earlier, and electrician programs. So we just want to make sure that that information is highlighted. That can also be looked at through our website, tribalenergyalternatives.org. I think it's tribalalternatives.org actually. And you can feel free to kind of come up. But I want to go ahead and see if we have the opportunity to, as we have the fellows, if anyone has any questions. Bon will also be speaking again tomorrow too, so I'm sure if there's any finance specific ones.
All right, we just have a few minutes here. Any questions real quick for the fellows up here? Not fellas, but fellows. Okay, where we at? Okay, here we go.
Hello, my name is Tori from the Winnebago tribe. Is this something that an individual can apply for, or does your tribe have to endorse you to do the work, or do you have to be an existing employee? Or can you tell me about the criteria and selection process if some of those endorsements or roles within the tribe make you I guess, an ideal fellow candidate?
Yeah, so the ideal fellow candidate is really someone who's kind of demonstrated some interest or experience within the energy sector. One of the things that my team is really trying hard with all of our programming is not to fall into the realm of like exceptionalism, that you need to be the best and have all of the experience to do so. So we do have our application that will be coming out, and it does involve kind of that general application, letter of reference, and we do interviews just again to kind of see what that experience, you know, how that aligns. We welcome folks who work at their tribes as well. You know, I think Josiah had to make sure that it was okay for him to take this fellowship through his tribe. So we always want to make sure that we're defaulting to kind of protocol and processes at that employer level first. And then it's just a spectrum of individuals that we've had. We've had solar installers who are kind of looking to start their own company, as well as folks who are their founders of their own company as well. So the funding streams do look a little bit different for how they receive that money, but that money, when it comes in, is broken up during that 18-month period. So it's not all at once. It's kind of broken up into about 7 different payments just for that continuation. But the eligibility is really kind of diverse. I'm transitioning a little bit out of seeing the program, but Danita Ordaz, who's our workforce specialist, will be kind of taking that over. And so we're just evaluating what some of the eligibility will look like, but it really should be in alignment with wanting to make sure individuals who are just really starting to have some footing in renewable energy or energy itself and are pursuing this are really strong candidates, and we want to encourage anyone from different types of backgrounds to apply. All right, thank you.
Thank you for that question, ladies and gentlemen. Again, Innovation in Energy, Tribal Energy Alternatives Fellows, Lightning Pass Forward. Thank you, Angelica, for moderating that. Another round of applause. Let them hear you. Let them hear you. All right, good stuff. Okay, here we go. Thank you all very much. Okay, last but not least, our last one here for the day. I'm going to make this a reminder to you again because I know some of y'all are trying to roll out right now. At least y'all stayed this long. Sometimes y'all, after lunch, y'all roll out. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, watch this. So tomorrow morning, Cameron Osceola will be doing the acoustics over at the Hard Rock Cafe in the morning for breakfast. Breakfast won't be next door. Breakfast is going to be over in the Hard Rock at the casino. You know, right, that little Hard Rock Cafe there. You have to have your badge to attend that. You have to have your badge to get in. That's going to be tomorrow morning over there. Okay, last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage for our final presenter. And then again, we'll get started this. Brooke, can you stand up again? Brooke, let's give Brooke a round of applause. Just running back there, running production. Go ahead, stand up again. No, I'm just joking. What time do we start in the morning? She's going to let me know that. Okay, and so we'll kick off at 8:30 in here. Is that correct? Okay, so with that being said, please stick around for our final presenter, A Path to Tribal Energy Independence. Give a warm round of applause to our CEO, Roger Kushwa, CRC, Biofuel Solutions of America. Let's hear him, ladies and gentlemen. Roger Kushwa, turn this portion of the program over to you, boss.
Thank you, Chance. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for hanging around and waiting. I'll hopefully be able to provide you some really good information. I'd like to start off first by thanking Chance. Chance, last year you did a fantastic job and you've gone above and beyond this year. So thank you very much. I also want to thank Georgette and, if you hold applause till the very end, hopefully I can get through quicker. Georgette, Brooke, Jasmine, and the Native Learning Center, it's a privilege and an honor to be here. And I appreciate all of the hard work that you all have done to make this. Last year was a great event, but this year has surpassed that. And so I really appreciate the opportunity here. And then to the Alliance for Tribal Clean Energy for last night's reception, for your sponsorship and commitment to this event and the other events in Indian country. I really appreciate that. For all of the sponsors that have sponsored to make this event happen, thank you. All the presenters to date have been fantastic. I've learned something new in just about every single presentation. And so I hope that my presentation today will maintain that and that you'll be able to walk away with something new. So thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Kudos to all of you all. As Chance said, my name is Roger Kushwa. I'm the CEO of CRC Biofuel Solutions of America, and I am the switchgrass guy. Switchgrass, for those of you who do not know, is a native warm season grass, and it was here, the Midwest tribes, the Western tribes, you have a long history with switchgrass. When Europeans came, we did not know anything about it. We pulled it up, got rid of it. My first 3 slides in the presentation are not for our tribal members. It's for the non-tribal members. And in looking at the need for electricity in tribal nations and tribal communities, I was surprised by the numbers. And you all live the numbers, you know what the challenges are in your reservations and your communities. And so I want to point out to those non-native members the importance of what we're doing here and why it is so important. I lived 7 years without running water and indoor plumbing. I lived 1.5 years with no electricity. I had a wife, 3 small children, 2 dogs, and 3 cats. And I know what it's like not to have electricity. I know what it's like in the summers. You have to bring bags of ice home to put in the cooler so you can keep your perishables from spoiling. I know what it's like to wake up in the morning and your shoes are frozen to the floor and you can't get them off the floor. I know what it's like when everybody has to wear a coat, hat, and gloves and sleep in the same bed. I remember when I moved from that situation into an apartment and we had electricity and running water. And it just amazed me that I could walk into the bathroom and turn the spigot and have hot water. I was used to heating water up on the stove, pouring it in a dish tub, taking a 24-ounce cup and taking a shower. And to have indoor plumbing. And sometimes I still get amazed and still get goosebumps when I go in and I can cut that water on and it's there. So electricity is very, very important. And so as I said, these first 3 slides are just to demonstrate to the non-natives the challenges of not having electricity and how many tribal nations and tribal members do not have electricity. Right now it's estimated that there's 16,000 to 17,000 tribal homes with an estimated 54,000 people that have no electricity. And, you know, people now are getting a taste of it. There'll be a few days without or maybe a week without. But when you have to go through seasons without electricity, you begin to understand how important electricity is and how it affects your everyday life and the decisions that you make and the way that you live your life. This is just a breakdown of some of the tribes and the challenges that they face in getting electricity. 2.4 million acres. I forget, it was like 30,000 people, 40,000 people. There could be large blocks of land that it's cost prohibitive right now to get power there. So how do we get those remote communities electricity? How do we get them equitable electricity, heat, hot water? How do we provide jobs? A gentleman asked earlier about jobs. And we do that through boilers. And I'll get into that. The challenges and barriers. We've had historical exclusions, The Rural Electrification Act in 1936 bypassed many reservations. We've had other legislation since then that prohibited and made it very difficult for tribal nations. Cost and logistics, the grid expansions, costing millions, the length to run transmission lines and to get that power there. Regulatory and sovereignty issues, the difficulty that tribes face in accessing tax incentives and that type of thing for energy projects. The government has made it extremely difficult, and that needs to change. Also, the fragmentation of tribal lands. Some tribal lands may have dozens, if not hundreds of people who are involved in getting things on property or getting things to property in 2 locations. And so all of these barriers help to make it difficult to get that infrastructure in. We all know about the IRA cutbacks with the change of administrations. And then we look at the impacts, as I said, of no electricity. Well, you can't have a refrigerator. So when you go to the grocery store, you can't buy a week's worth of groceries. You can buy a couple of days that'll fit in a cooler, and then you'll bring ice home every day. And you'll put ice in, and you'll come back the next day and do it. You'll haul water. I had 4 green 5-gallon jugs, and that's what I've carried water to and from for the family. I'd fill out the 5 1-gallon jugs for my wife, and I'd take them, the green ones back and fill them, and it was back and forth every day. And when you live, one gentleman said 800 miles from the nearest big city, Well, when you live 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 miles from a community, a grocery store, or someplace where you can get good water to drink, it takes gas to go back and forth. It takes time to go back and forth. And if you're already economically challenged, you have just increased that exponentially, making it more difficult. And so the need for electricity and electrical sovereignty is vital. And so that's something that I am very, very passionate about, having actually experienced that and lived with that. How I came to be here today. My father, back in the early 2000s, was working for Virginia Tech. And the Conservation Management Institute at Virginia Tech came and tasked him with finding a cash crop for landowners and farmers in Virginia. Back in the early 2000s, switchgrass was the darling biofuel. It was the latest, greatest. It was better than sliced bread and shirt pockets. And President Bush mentioned it in his State of the Union address. And so my father lived in Virginia and started going around looking for solid fuel boilers. Found Piedmont Geriatric Hospital in Burkeville, Virginia. They had solid fuel boilers. They had been burning coal. They were now burning wood waste and wood products. And they were looking for another fuel source. And so he started working with them. In 2007, they had a symposium, and that's where the Farm to Fuel project was started. And it was great. They were so excited until they realized they had no switchgrass. So then they had to go and find switchgrass. It takes 2 years to establish a stand of switchgrass before you can harvest it. So they worked. They got switchgrass started. They were growing switchgrass. In 2010, I started hearing my father talk about this. My children were getting older. I was busy. I would visit. Sometimes I'd ride down to the hospital with my dad. Didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to what he was doing. And in 2017, Piedmont Geriatric Hospital started making switchgrass their primary fuel source for their boilers. Their boiler facility provides steam for heat and hot water to the geriatric hospital. And then the state of Virginia built I call it a prison, they call it a rehabilitation facility. I'm sorry, if you've got the triple layer chain link fences and the concertina wire and the sally ports, and they check under and through your vehicle before you can go in and out, it's a prison. And so the steam plant there at Piedmont provides steam for that facility as well. They have 3 boilers. They have 2 400-horse boilers and 1 265-horse boiler. And so I started hearing my dad going down there. And so I started going with him and listening and walking through the boiler plant. And he would go down once a month and get the numbers and come back and do the reports for them. In 2020, my dad was 85. I wanted to spend more time with him. I was living in Texas, and a position came open at the steam plant. They were looking for a boiler mechanic. I'd been an automotive mechanic for 18 years. I'd owned my own shop. My wife and I were in the Marine Corps, and we worked on the electronic equipment in Harrier and A4 jets. And so I wanted to come back and be close to my dad. He was 85, and who knows what'll happen. My mom had already passed. And so I came back in 2020 and started working at Piedmont Geriatric Hospital as a boiler mechanic and boiler operator. It was then that I really started to see the advantages of switchgrass. Part of my job there, because we were a state hospital, you had to have 2 sources of fuel. So I think I'm getting off. I'm sorry. So we see, I'm going the wrong way. Can we go back? Boy, that's a good question. Okay, yeah, right there will be fine. Right there, that's good, thank you. Our vision for switchgrass for the tribes So what we see switchgrass doing, and please understand that because I see this as a path does not mean that it's your path. I realize that switchgrass will not work for everybody. But what we want to do is we want to make everybody aware of switchgrass and the opportunity and the potential. I'm currently working with a tribe on the East Coast. We're in negotiations, and in February we'll meet with the tribal council. But they have acquired some land and are looking to build or looking for a way to utilize the pasture. It's a large piece of property, but they have no idea, they don't know what they're going to do with it yet. And so what they're looking at is planting the switchgrass and letting us manage the land where they receive an annual check once a year. It's a fixed check, they know what it is, and they don't have to worry about the management of the land. And they're generating revenue. And so we're working with them. So they don't have a quote unquote energy project right now. They don't know what they need, and that's okay. Because when they do decide what they want, and if it is an energy project, then they've already got their fuel source planted and working. And they don't have to wait that 2 years for the grass to grow before it can be harvested the third year. So it's a native warm season grass. As I shared, Midwestern tribes and your Western tribes have a deep, long history with switchgrass. It can grow on marginal land, saving that food-producing land for food production. It's really good on marginal land. It's heat and drought tolerant. Once it's established, it doesn't matter. Unless there's an invasive species, you don't have to fertilize it. You harvest it once a year, and you can go 15 to 20 plus years before you have to replant it. Provides habitat for small game animals and small game birds, especially quail. Quail love switchgrass because it has all of the little paths down around the clumps. It's called a bunch grass. It has all those little pathways for the birds to get to the seeds on the ground, which is very important for the wildlife. Improves soil and water quality. Switchgrass has an extensive root structure, anywhere from 4 to 12 feet deep. And so what that does is it protects the soil from wind erosion, and it also helps to filter the water before it goes into your tributaries, your ponds and your creeks. Maryland and Virginia around the Chesapeake Bay are using switchgrass to filter the water before it goes into the Chesapeake Bay, and to keep the soil back from eroding into the bay. And so that's another great benefit. It can be used to provide heat, hot water, electricity, and jobs. A gentleman asked earlier about jobs, and we'll see in another slide, one of the challenges that they faced is because solid fuel boilers are labor intensive. They require a lot of labor, as opposed to natural gas, propane, or fuel oil. There's also multiple revenue streams available for switchgrass, not just for the boiler. And I'll go through those in a little bit as well. So what does switchgrass offer the tribal communities? It offers you the opportunity to grow your own fuel on marginal land and use it in a boiler facility to generate heat, hot water, and electricity for your community. And so this means that it's growing on your land, you harvest it, you put it in your facilities, and you use it to generate heat and electricity and hot water for your people. Growing and harvesting switchgrass produces jobs. Operating a boiler facility produces jobs. And boiler operators, the national average for a boiler operator, I think, is about $80,000 a year. So it's a good job. Funding opportunities for growing switchgrass. Switchgrass is unique in that it's not limited to just the Department of Energy. You can get federal and state energy departments, you can get federal and state agriculture departments, federal and state wildlife departments will have grants for it. Mining. Now you say mining, what does mining have to do with switchgrass? On the ash piles, the ash pits that come from the mining process, Pennsylvania is doing it now. They're using switchgrass on the mine reclamation land because the trees, if they put trees on it, usually these ash pits are only about 4 feet deep. So when a storm comes through, winds come, it blows the trees over. Well, when the tree blows over, the root ball comes up. Well, now you've exposed all of that ash, and it's blowing, and they get fined. The mines get fined. And so they want to plant that switchgrass because it won't blow over. It keeps that ash pit covered, and it protects the land. And so that's how mining departments do it. Natural resources, plus conservation and environmental groups can also provide funding. The tribal nation that we're hoping to work with on the East Coast, our grower actually has the grant. And this grant will actually pay the tribe for the first 2 years that there's no harvest. So they're going to get paid a set fee for 2 years. The third year when they harvest, our grower comes in, harvests, weighs it, and the tribe is paid by the weight per ton. You don't have to do anything. The tribe doesn't have to plant it. The tribe doesn't have to fertilize it in the first 2 years. The tribe doesn't have to maintain it. The tribe doesn't have to harvest it. The tribe doesn't have to haul it off. The only thing the tribe has to do is walk down to the mailbox and get the check out of the mailbox. And not all grants will provide that 2 years of initial income, but with all of these grant opportunities, we will do everything we can to help you find the best use that you can. This grant is for 5 years that this tribal nation's looking at. Ideally, we like to sign a 10-year contract. So at the end of 5 years, if the tribal nation, let's say they haven't decided what they want to do and they want to continue having us manage the land, we just sign another 5 or a 10-year contract. Whatever they feel like is the length of time they'll need to get their infrastructure and plan in place, and then when they're ready, they take it over and it's theirs. And so, you know, that is a huge benefit for tribal nations, I think. Where does it grow? The green areas show you where the switchgrass grows. And basically that is everywhere west of the Rockies, or excuse me, east of the Rockies, from the Gulf of either America or Mexico, however you want to call it, all the way up into Canada. Canada has a very robust, I know we had some Canadian tribes here earlier, and Canada has a very robust switchgrass market and infrastructure. And what they're doing is they're pelletizing it and using it for home heat. So that is another revenue stream. You can pelletize it and use it for home heat in the home wood stoves. Past and present challenges and challenges in using switchgrass. I talked to 3 different projects that were burning, direct fire burning switchgrass back in the early 2000s. And all 3 of them stopped for basically the same 3 reasons. And 2 of those reasons come into the first category, the stable supply chain. Piedmont Geriatric Hospital, 13 farmers with over 3,000 acres in the surrounding 6 counties to the hospital provide the grass for the hospital to burn. The hospital runs 24/7, 365. Doesn't matter what the weather is, doesn't matter whether it's snowing, sleeting, raining, 105, it doesn't matter. Imagine, and when it's cold, we would go through 5 wagon loads a day of fuel. And oftentimes they would bring me a 6th one and park it there because if they couldn't get back the next morning early enough, we would be out. We didn't have a big enough silo. Imagine trying to coordinate 5 or 6 loads a day with 13 landowners. It's a logistical nightmare. So we looked at the supply chain and we figured out a way to bypass that and to eliminate that. The other problem that goes along with that is the quality of fuel. The switchgrass that we burn at Piedmont, it comes straight out of the field. It's not pelletized, it's not done into the pucks, it's cut, chopped, and baled. It's put into a wagon and it's brought down and unloaded at the power plant, and it's loose. Moisture content is less than 15% out of the field. So it's extremely dry. When you look at wood products are typically 30 to 50% moisture. Can you burn wet wood? Well, you can, but it's got to be a hot fire and you're going to get a lot of smoke, aren't you? It's not going to keep you warm. And so it's the same thing in a boiler. And so the quality of the fuel is really, really important. And in order to maintain those low moisture parameters, you have to harvest in a very narrow window of time. Well, imagine trying to get 13 farmers to harvest when they're supposed to. It's extremely difficult. So we fixed that problem. And we'll come down to the solid fuel boilers require a lot of labor. With a solid fuel boiler system, you have augers, you have drag chains, you have bucket elevators, you have conveyors, you have silos, you have all of that. When you have a boiler that's running on liquid natural gas, propane, fuel oil, if it's fuel oil, you have a storage tank and you have a pipe about that big that brings it in and then necks it down to another pipe and then it goes into the boiler. Well, you don't need anybody there. However, if you've got all of this other infrastructure, the silo, the unload, the augers, and all of that, it requires people and it requires labor. And I was really happy to hear somebody share, I think it was yesterday, that money saved is not always top priority with tribal nations. It's jobs, and it's good jobs. And so having something that requires labor doesn't scare tribal folks. Not the same way it does out there. And you're looking for jobs for your people. You're looking for opportunities. And so having a solid fuel boiler system provides you that. And they're good jobs. And then the third one was boiler slagging and deposit formations. And what I mean by that is switchgrass has silicate in the chemical makeup. Well, when you burn coal and wood, and especially if it's got that high moisture content, you have to run a really high furnace temp to dry that wood out before you can burn it. So you're losing a lot of heat value in just trying to dry out that water. When they first started burning switchgrass, they weren't used to it being that dry. So what did? They burned it at those super high temps. Well, what happened to the silicate? The silicate liquefied, and it looks just like lava flowing. I watched the pictures out in Hawaii of the volcano, and you see the lava. It just moves super, super slow, but it's flowing, and that's what it looks like inside the boiler. It happened to me one time, and that was twice too much, but it happened to me one time, and it just freaked me out. I couldn't figure out what was going on, and then I looked at the furnace temp, and I said, oh, I know what's going on. And so we have to change how we burn switchgrass as opposed to wood. Well, they never experimented that long to figure it out. And so that was another thing that they figured out there at Piedmont. From 2010 to about 2017 is when they did all of this trial and error. Chop length matters. So that's the length of the grass. If the grass is too long, it wraps around the augers. Well, that grass will pack as tight as concrete. I mean, I've taken rebar and a sledgehammer trying to unpack a jam. And so chop length matters, moisture matters, all of these things matter. And so I have just totally messed this all up. But anyways, so, you know, you're going through, thank you all very much. So you're going through and you're looking at this, and the chop length matters, all of that matters. And so we've been able to correct all of those challenges. And this is what we want to do, is we want to come in and work with the tribal nation who has got land, who is looking for a way to generate revenue off of it, especially if it's marginal land. And we can go through and we can help you develop a plan for that, that maybe eventually you can use it to produce power and heat and hot water. Or you can use it to produce poultry bedding. Switchgrass makes excellent poultry bedding. You can blend it with coal. I believe it is Wyoming who has more coal than any other state in the nation. And the governor of Wyoming recently made it known Wyoming is not going to stop burning coal and using coal. Well, you can blend switchgrass with coal and reduce carbon greenhouse gas emissions. And you don't have to blend a lot. So there's a revenue stream. Back to the poultry houses. Tyson and Purdue love it because it increased the health of the birds, it increased the weight gain of the birds, and it protected the chicken feet from ammonia burns. Now you say, why is that important? Well, apparently in Asia, chicken feet are a delicacy, but they won't eat them if it's got ammonia burns on it. So by using switchgrass and avoiding those ammonia burns, they can now sell those chicken feet in Asia. Another revenue source. The construction socks, you've seen those socks on the side of the road and construction sites that are used to control erosion and water and all of that. That's switchgrass. Pellets, making pellets for home heating like they do in Canada is another opportunity. So there are all kinds of opportunities for switchgrass that have nothing to do with creating energy. So you have multiple revenue streams that are available. The benefits, the environmental, like I said, because of the deep root structure, it sequesters carbon. And it's just fantastic. I use the illustration, if you have 1,000 acres of woods or timber, and you have 1,000 acres of switchgrass, and you harvest that 1,000 acres of timber, it's going to be 15 to 20 years before you can harvest it again. And you're probably going to spend 6, 7, 8 years looking at stumps until the growth gets up enough that it covers it. Switchgrass, you can take 1,000 acres of switchgrass once it's established, you cut it once a year and it looks just like a hayfield. Hayfields look pretty good when they're cut. They look pretty good when they're grown up before you harvest it. And so you get, it's a much better use of the land. Soil health, like I said, with the deep root structure, it protects the soil from wind erosion, water erosion. The deep root structure puts the microbial content back into the soil, improving the life of the soil and the health of the soil. Wildlife habitat, as I shared, the small game, the quail love it. Multiple revenue streams, we mentioned those. The stable fuel cost, this is a big one. For those of you who are responsible for the budget and funding of your tribal nation, how hard is it planning on your fuel expenses? It's difficult. I know because when they would bring the number 2 fuel oil in at Piedmont to fill up those, we had 2 20,000-gallon tanks, and if it was cold, I could go through 15,000 gallons in 2 days, 2.5 days. And I would call in 2 tankers, order 15,000 gallons of number 2 fuel oil, and there could be as much as 20 cents difference between the first tanker and the second tanker on the same day. The price fluctuation went from about $1.43 or $1.53 up to $5 and change per gallon. Well, if it's not cold, you're not going to use a lot. But if it gets really cold like it is now, look how much fuel you're going to go through. How do you budget for that? How do you find the funds for that? At Piedmont, for 10 years, 2 years in testing before 2017, and from 2017 to 2025, the price per ton that Piedmont pays has not changed. The only thing that changed in the amount of fuel that they used a year was mechanical breakdowns and maintenance issues. And that's the only thing that changed. And of course, when you can't burn switchgrass, you're going to burn a lot of fuel oil. And you'll see that in one of the charts here. I go through and I'll give you all of the annual data for the last 8 years there at Piedmont, and you'll be able to see that. I'm going to show you the unloading area and the boiler and that. As I said, when we first started, they harvested the switchgrass exactly like you do hay. It's a 3-pass system. You can see the round bales. What they're dropping it in there is what we call a tub grinder. And what that was doing is that was taking the long strips of grass and chopping them down. And so we had to wait till we had harvest. They'd put it in, they'd grind it, they'd run it through the system to see what happened to the feed augers. If it jammed everything up, then they'd shorten it. And they'd try it again. And it was back and forth. And so here's the tub grinder that they used. This is one beautiful day there at the hospital. And you can see they burn, whether it's snowing, raining, sleeting, whatever. And so they originally started with dump trucks. They now use wagons and tractors, and the wagons have a walking floor in it, and they back up to the unload area, and they can walk off 6.5 to 8 tons in a relatively short period of time. Piedmont is going through an upgrade right now, and I'll explain that in a minute. This is the bottom of the silo. And I took this picture because we were getting ready to clean the walls of the silo, and I just thought the 2 screws were neat. And what those screws do, they're about 25 feet long, and they move horizontal across the floor of the silo. And the augers turn, and it pulls the fuel out and puts it into the drag chain that feeds the boilers. And you can see how fine it looks compared to what comes out. This is boiler number 3 at the hospital. This boiler was installed brand new in 1985. It's a 265 horse Kilwani boiler. It started burning coal, they then moved to wood products. In 2017, they moved to switchgrass. And they're getting ready to replace this boiler. The new boiler's already been ordered and paid for. They're putting in a new silo system. Remember how I said we'd get 5 wagon loads a day? The new silo system, they're replacing this 260 horse with a 400 horse. So now the facility will have 3 400 horse boilers, which are capable of putting out about 15,600 pounds of steam an hour. We have 2 biomass boilers, 1 dedicated fuel oil boiler. The one boiler we have that's biomass is also fuel oil, so it's a hybrid. So that one can switch back and forth between biomass and fuel oil. However, the feed system we had, I couldn't run both boilers at the same time. So we used boiler number 3 in the summer when the heat demand wasn't there and all they needed was water for steam and for hot water. And while we got the other 2 boilers inspected, well, with the add-ons of the other state hospital, that boiler couldn't keep up. The fuel oil boiler was kicking in, and a 400 horse boiler, that one it'll never keep up. You had to go and manually cut off the 400 horse to let this one run. And so they're in the middle of replacing that now. But the new silo system will be able to feed both biomass boilers at the same time, and will hold enough fuel for both of those boilers to run wide open for 96 hours before you have to add any more fuel to the silo. And that's incredible. It's going to be a big silo. This is looking through the door of boiler number 3. You can see the BTU value, and that ranges. Operator skill has a lot to do with that number. Fuel quality has a lot to do with that number. In December of 2024, they got 17,990,000 BTUs per ton. That is unreal for a grass. And I wished I'd have been there. I would have loved to have seen that. Talking back about the grass, here's a look at the longer chop, and you can see what happens. There's still marks in the office door where they put a 6x6 across the opening, hooked a chain to it and a come along, and tried to pull that auger out. And they thought it was going to pull the wall of the office down. They had it stretched that tight. They were torquing it. Look at the size of that pipe wrench. storage facility and harvesting equipment. And I shared a little about the harvesting equipment, but here you can see, and this was a really good picture because you can actually see the 3 different harvest methods that they used, and we have switched to the little white ones at the end there. You see the round bales. Everybody knows stacking round things, you don't get near as much as if you're stacking rectangles and can put it side by side and pack it in tight, so they had gone to the rectangles. Well, when the company that does the growing actually got a grant to develop a piece of equipment where they can go through, they can cut the grass, rake it, chop it, and bale it in one pass. It bales into about a 600-pound white marshmallow, and that's what I call them because that's what they look like. They just look like giant white marshmallows out in the field. And that's what it's in. You can actually leave those marshmallows outside. They're weather resistant, they're not weatherproof. However, they work much better with the boiler chopped switchgrass because it's not long. The longer the grass stem, the more likely it is that it's going to poke holes through that plastic membrane. And everywhere it pokes holes, water leaks in. And so you lose that advantage of low moisture content in the fuel. This is the inside of the facility. They cut the bales open. They were running it in a tub grinder and then loading it into the dump trucks, and then they moved to the wagons. They used to store it out in the field before they had that building. And they would put the tarps over it, and that's how they stored it, and then they brought it to us. And you can see the evolution. The traditional 3-pass harvest system. If a tribal nation is already cutting hay, you don't have to buy all new equipment. You'll have to get a tub grinder. If you're wanting to make pellets, you'll have to get a pellet machine, but they're not super expensive. And you can buy those used. And so you can use the hay, your equipment that you already have. You're just going to have to adjust a few things. And it's all doable. Here's the new machine that they developed. They can actually sit in the cab, push buttons, and change the chop length on the grass as they go through. Environmental and fiscal benefits. These are some of the numbers that came from Piedmont. The greenhouse gas, the metric tons, and what we did for the land, you'll see that the 3,000 plus acres, is we only factored the sequestered carbon off of the grass that we burned. And we only used about half of the grass that was produced. So that 3,000 acres, Piedmont is contracted for 4,000 tons, and that's only about half. Typically, you're going to get somewhere between 3 and 5, maybe 6 tons an acre, depending. They average 4 tons an acre. And so they are only using about a half of what is produced. The rest of it is being used in other projects that our grower has going. Here you can see we had saved the Commonwealth $2.9 million. And actually it's a little over that now because I did not take into account the 40 days and all of the test burns and the savings that they had done in all of the testing. So it's over $3 million. You can see the price per gallon for the fuel oil, $1.56 to $5.43 a gallon. And it can change as much as 20 cents in 2 loads in the same day. And when you've got 7,000 gallons times 20 cents a gallon's a good chunk of change. We offset 2.2 million gallons of fuel oil by burning switchgrass. So it means in the 8 years, we saved the state from burning 2.285 million gallons of fuel oil to produce the same amount of steam. Here's the chart that gives you the breakdowns. And you can look at 2019, 2023, 2024, and 2025. And those, you can look at the tons of switchgrass burned, and you can see they're noticeably less. That's not because of the switchgrass, that's because of maintenance and difficulty in getting parts. Some of the parts that we had in the plant came from Germany. especially with boiler number 3. And those companies, to get parts, they're not even in business anymore. So that means you had to change the system or have something fabricated. And it just, the hospital didn't want to spend the money. They thought it was cheaper to buy the number 2 fuel oil than to carry the maintenance. Frequently asked questions. Do I have to have a current plan to use and grow the switchgrass? And that answer is no. The tribe on the East Coast that we're hoping to work with and is going to plant grass, they don't have a use for it right now. And that's okay. Our grower does, and he'll take care of that. What it does is it allows you the opportunity, the tribal nation, to work on your infrastructure. How do you want to use the grass? How do you want to use your land? Do you want to have what we call a cogeneration facility that provides heat, hot water, and electricity? What buildings do you want to have use that? And so it gives you the opportunity to make those plans, make revenue, and not have to expend resources, time, and personnel in managing that. Do you have to manage the switchgrass? No. Our grower comes in, does the preparation, the planting. There's minimal fertilization the first 2 years. After the first 2 years, there's no fertilization at all, unless you have an invasive species come in. And so they do all of the harvesting. They come in at least twice a year and inspect the fields to make sure that nothing is going on that shouldn't be. And if something needs to happen, they can make adjustments and change. One thing they do is they plant a pollinator strip around all of the fields. And this pollinator strip is for your pollinators, your bees, your songbirds, and that type of thing. And they just do that because they feel it's important. Do we have to add or change any of the current equipment to begin using switchgrass? And that question is primarily for those who may have a solid fuel boiler system. If you already have a solid fuel boiler and are using solid fuel, be it coal or wood products, then we can come in, I have switchgrass available, we can run a test burn, but the vast majority of the time, you do not have to change any of your infrastructure. None of your feed augers, none of your drag chains, none of your unload areas, none of your conveyors. If it's handling wood products or coal, it'll handle switchgrass. Do you need to buy new harvesting equipment? I addressed that. Nope. If you've got hay equipment, you can harvest your switchgrass with hay equipment. And the only thing you will need to get is, if you're going to use it in a solid fuel boiler, is you'll need to get a tub grinder so we can get that chop length right. And then finally, can switchgrass be used to heat homes? Absolutely. Canada is doing it. All it requires is a pellet press. And you can make they can make their pellets. And you can distribute pellets on the reservation, and people can come and you can bag it, and they can carry the bags and fill the pellet stoves and that. And that is my presentation. Again, thank you.
Go back here real quick.
Okay, and while you're going back there, Chance, yeah. Again, I know switchgrass is not for everybody, and switchgrass will not fit for every tribe, and every tribe may not be interested, and that's fine. That is fantastic. But what we want to make sure is that you know that there's options out there. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Roger. I've been looking at biofuels for a while, and currently we're located in northern Wisconsin near some wetlands, and we have a lot of reed canary grass as an invasive species. What's the concern with that taking over your switchgrass plantations?
That's something that I would have to talk to our grower about. If you are interested, what we would do is we would come up, take a look, and I was talking with, was it Jill this morning in the very first one, and she was talking about how NREL, the Rockies now, they changed the name, but that they can provide funding that can help tribal nations with getting us to there to look at things and assess. And what I would have to do is bring our grower in. He would have to look at it and see how pervasive it is, and that's more of a him than me. My specialty is using it in boilers. And so, but he would come in and we would address that. We went to the tribal nation on the East Coast. He and I went out there and we walked the land with their environmental director, and looked at the fields. He didn't see any issues. And so, you know, the thing to remember though is the grants that we get can be very specific. The tribe asked about planting deer feed and food plots. And he can't, because the grant specifically dictates it has to be for energy production and it has to be used this way. And so, but there are a whole host of opportunities for grants that can address those if you're wanting and looking for food plots for deer, elk, caribou, whatever. But we will do all we can to help it succeed. And ideally, we want the tribe to take over. I would love to come back. My father will be 91 in May, and he still works. He still goes to Piedmont and gets the numbers every month. He traps. Right now, Virginia's under snow, and I talked to him on the phone the other day, and I said, well, did you go go set your traps? He said, no, son. He says, it's down into the single digits, and we got 1.5 feet of snow. He said, I just don't want to. I said, well, Daddy, you're 90, almost 91. I said, you've earned the right just to sit at home and take it easy. And so, but we're looking for those long-term, long-range relationships. And we want to do all we can to help you in any way that we can.
One more time, ladies and gentlemen. Roger Cushwa right here, CRC, Biofuel Solutions of America. Thank you for being at our conference. Thank you for your words. And you'll be around tomorrow too? Or?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
yes,
if
sir.
you have any questions that you can think of until then, please do. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, again, let's give a big round of applause for Native Learning Center, Seminole Tribe of Florida, Seminole Media Productions. Thank you all very much. And all you are participating, all of our sponsors. Okay, don't forget, in the morning at 7:30, I believe breakfast starts up. We'll have Cameron Osceola doing the guitar acoustics over there at the Hard Rock Cafe. Not next door, but the Hard Rock Cafe. Then kickoff in here is at 8:30 in the morning, okay? So you guys all enjoy, and enjoy your evening. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Let's go.